Good morning, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. It is 9:01, Monday, November 20th. We are at the Diamond Head Beach Resort. All council members are present, town manager, town attorney, town clerk. If you please rise for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Be with us today as we ask your hand of blessing on this meeting. As we consider and take actions today, help us to arrive at decisions that are thoughtful, respectful, and well-informed. Thank you for the solemn honor of serving the public in our roles, and continue to bless all those fortunate enough to live here, work here, or visit here. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we have the approval of the final agenda. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda?
I'll move it.
There's a motion by Councilor King,
Second.
second by Councilor Veach. Any further discussion? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Public comment. Madam Clerk?
Yep. First up is Ken Davin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is, you see the pictures in front of you. This is the owner of the front lot, Chris. Some of you guys may know him. He's been down.
Give your name and address for the record, please.
Ken Davin. Oh, into the mic.
Into the mic.
There you go.
My name's Ken Davin, and my address is 450 Birdsong Place, Sanibel, Florida.
Okay.
You want mine?
Sure.
Yes. Yeah, my name's Chris Pleward. I live at, here on the beach. I live at 21631 Widgeon Terrace.
And Chris owns the front lot, and we're proposing to buy the lot on the beach side in front of his lot at 7944 and 7946 Estero Boulevard.
I just want to say one thing. They also, before, at time, they were actually together as one lot, and they separated out. I want to say it was in 1987, I believe. So it was all one property at one time.
And what we're proposing to do is the existing houses are gone. There's a few pillars left on the front lot that we're trying to buy. And we're proposing to build this unit or something similar to this. And we need some zoning changes. And to explain what we're doing here, there'd be a garage, and over to the left, all the way to the left is a little tunnel with beach access to the public. So you'd be able to go through there 7 foot wide. It's not really a tunnel because it's open on the one side with just columns, which hold up the rest of the building. There would be around 30 parking spots underneath in the garage, which probably most of those could be public parking because the units, there's an elevator that takes the cars for the owners up to their unit. And no cars would be running inside the building. A robotic lift would lift them and turn them up to 180 degrees inside. Also, if we do the helipad, if we go up even higher and do the helipad, an emergency vehicle would be able to go into the garage, pull in the elevator, and take it up and unload a patient or something onto the helipad and evacuate them out. Any questions?
We don't communicate back and forth during
Oh,
public comment,
okay.
but
All
if
right.
you have more information, feel free. You still got some
Okay.
time.
All right. Well, I think that for Fort Myers Beach, this is kind of the way that things could go, especially at that end of the island. We could do some really unique things and bring in, I think it'd probably bring in about $1 million a year in revenue, in tax revenue for this little building. There's like 3 units on each floor, and these are going to go 5 million plus each. So 21 units. If we go up a little higher, it could go up to 35 units. And I do think the helipad might be an advantage if we could get up above the building next door, which is 9 stories high.
Thank you.
Let me say one thing.
We're gonna give them an extra, there's 2 of them, so give them.
So I'll just kind of, just want to sum it up a little bit. The big thing is down in that area, because I lived down there before the hurricane, is that there's no public access. You either got to go all the way down to the bridge or you got to go up to Leonardo Arms. We're right in the middle. So we can offer the community free passage out to the beach. That's something you guys are giving back to the community as a whole. So we're offering that to you. We can offer extra parking. So there's, parking is an issue. The helipad, if we can do that, it would be great for emergency, for getting people on and off the island. We all know how it is during season here. So going south is a lot easier than going north. Plus, if we had if usher somebody out on the helicopter, and then the revenue, like he said, I think there's 4 really good options here for the town of Fort Myers Beach to prosper and move in the right direction, which is the way I think you guys are going. With everything that's gone down since the hurricane, it's really a unique opportunity. Look at it as something that kind of is like even a test of what we could actually bring to Fort Myers Beach.
Yeah, the other thing is our buildings are built with 280-mile-an-hour winds. They're tested and have UL rating on them. Everything we build, even the smaller buildings we're building on Carolina Street right now, and a couple other places we're pulling permits. They're not hurricane proof, but definitely hurricane resistant. So I think that's about all.
Okay, well,
Okay.
I would suggest you get with staff. They'll be the ones that would be able to help you through some of the issues you may or may not have. We appreciate you coming up, and I've
Yeah,
seen this concept in action before, and I've actually seen it work. So I know I'm pretty familiar with it, but
Oh, good.
I would say get with staff and kind of,
Right. I just want to make sure that if we do go ahead and buy the property, that we have somewhat of a good positive toward getting the rezoning.
again, I would
Okay.
I would
All right.
sit down with staff. They'll be able to direct you much better than we will
Oh,
as
okay.
far as what you can and can't do specifically.
All right. Appreciate it.
You got
Thanks.
it. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
That's all I have signed up.
Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Annie Neef, 125 Pearl Street, just across the street here. I'm the town yoga instructor. And yeah, so this is in the magazines and, part of the ad campaign for Fort Myers, all of these happy people with their happy hamstrings on the beach. I do this. Like, I bring smiles to people's faces. I stretch the town hamstrings. And it's a great class. I'm looking forward to doing this again on the beach. I know that we have a 30% rate that I'm supposed to give the town for the privilege of doing this. 30% is a little high. I know it's on your agenda now anyway. I'm not bringing in millions of dollars. Like, this is not, maybe $500 we're talking about at the most at the end of the year. But anyway, I'm looking forward to doing this again. And thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. And some would argue smiles are worth $1 million. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Next, we have local achievements and recognitions. Counselor Veach,
I've got nothing at this time.
Counselor Whitson,
I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving because that seems to be on our plate for this week. So happy Turkey Day.
no pun intended.
Right.
Vice Mayor Adderholt,
Nothing additional. Thank you.
Counselor King,
I'm just going to take a minute. I'll borrow a phrase from the vice mayor to my left and talk about how we need to celebrate and share our stories. So last Tuesday was a year ago when Karen and I were sworn in as counselors. And I just wanted to recognize my colleagues on this council for all their work in this last year. We've been through, in less than 6 months, we were through 5 town managers, 2 and a little over that, we've been through 2 town attorneys. I think we're headed in the right direction with both, and I appreciate their work. Mayor Allers, I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate all your hard work. You're almost like the Energizer Bunny of mayors. Take care of yourself though, because you need to be here. Continue that hard work, and I do appreciate, Mayor, how you've been open and communicative, especially with Mondays with the mayor, which is now moving to Sundays, which means I can have mimosas when you're talking. Vice Mayor Adderhold, I've said it on my Facebook post. You're the hardest working vice mayor in the business, and I appreciate all you've done, especially working on the school ad hoc committee and then working to get businesses like CVS and Publix and others back up and running. Councilor Veach, appreciate all your efforts on everything, including your time with the Resilient League. Councilor Woodson, I appreciate your expertise in behind the scenes with negotiating on a couple of contracts and your work with Let's Go FMB. And most of all, I appreciate all of you for putting up with me and my silly need every once in a while when I sit behind a microphone I did it for 10 years, so I just have a need every once in a while to entertain. So thanks very much.
Very nice. Thanks, sir. That it?
Yes.
I have nothing to add to that. The next was advisory committee items, reports, and appointments. Is there any? Seeing none. Next, we will get to the reorganization of council. This is to select a mayor and vice mayor in accordance with the town charter. Vice mayor has so apropos claimed this the most awkward 5 minutes in any meeting. So you're leaning in like you want to say something.
I was just going to make a nomination.
Oh, go ahead.
I would nominate Dan Allers to be our mayor for one additional term here for a 1-year term. And
I'll second.
Any other, I don't think we needed seconds, but I appreciate it. Any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. That brings us to vice mayor.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Jim Adderholt for vice mayor.
Are there any other nominations? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously.
thank you
Less
all.
awkward.
Thank you all. That was pretty unawkward.
Well, it doesn't have to be awkward, I guess. What's that? Oh, yes, please. Next, we have approval of the minutes for the town council meeting for November 6, 2023, and the management and planning session for November 9th, 2023.
Move
there-
to approve.
Motion by Counselor King. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Veach. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Approval of minutes is passed unanimously. Next is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? I will make a motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Mayor Eiler, seconded by Counselor Woodson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. That motion carries unanimously. Next is our public hearing. It is the ordinance 2316, small scale map amendment for 21471 Widgeon Terrace. This is the second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 23-16 entitled An Ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending of the Fort Myers Beach adopted future land use map dated January 1st, 1999 for a portion of the property located at 21471 Widgeon Terrace and part of the adjacent common element property of Flamingo Harbor Condominium, Fort Myers Beach, providing for clarifications as necessary, providing for conflicts of law, scrivener's errors, severability, and providing for an effective date. We'll now open the second public hearing to adopt an ordinance. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Just real quick, I don't believe that I was sworn in for today. Do I need to do that with you?
This is a small scale plan change, so it's not quasi judicial.
Excellent.
It's
Thank you very
legislative.
much. Good morning, counselors. My name is Jason Smalley. I'm in the Planning and Zoning Department. It's good to see everybody. So as was mentioned before, this is the second reading for transmission of a small scale amendment to the state. If you will indulge me for a moment, I will just briefly go over what is going on here today. So as was mentioned in 1999, the future land use map was adopted in the town. Today, there's a request to classify that or rezone some of that area that was before denoted as wetlands area to a less restrictive type of designation. This has to go to the state ultimately because this is a amendment, even though it's a small scale amendment. The process today would be to approve, if you'd so choose, to transmit that small scale amendment to the state. The state would then have a timeframe to appeal that directly with the applicants. If they choose not to do that, then it would become part of the future land use map here for the town. Staff is open for any questions that you may have about the process today.
Are there any questions for Jason? Yes, sir.
You know, I appreciate why this is coming up, but the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause is I read through the reports about the soil, and I guess in the 80s it was wetlands, and then 2020 it's not. Now, was that because, I mean, I'm asking you kind of, I guess, a question that I know you probably can't answer is, how do we get from A to B? Was that because people filled the land, or is it just naturally no longer wetlands?
Yeah, I don't believe that staff can give any sort of actual scientific basis for what may or may not have changed in there. Staff had recommended a wetlands delineation, and the state may very well require that in the end. But at this point, we have to rely on what's being presented by the applicant and then wait for the state to file any appeals if they so choose.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sarah Spector with Retzel and Andrus on behalf of the applicant.
Any relation to Harry? Bad joke.
I get all of them.
You ever seen the TV series Suits?
Yes, I have. Spelled differently.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
I've always wanted to ask you
Yeah.
that. Sorry.
No problem. So this has been a 3-step process because the property is located in a condominium. Only the lot itself where the home is situated is owned by the unit owner. Behind that is limited common elements. We're proposing to put a pool that straddles both the unit and the limited common elements. So the first step in this process was to get approval from the condominium association, which we have done. The second step in that process was going to DEP to determine whether we would need a permit if they were in fact considered wetlands. We did go to DEP. We do have an exemption from DEP and an email from DEP saying that their determination was there was no wetlands, or else they would not have issued an exemption. So we feel that we have the approval from DEP that we need by getting that exemption, which we did in conjunction with Hans Wilson, who determined where that wetland line was along the mangroves, and that everything landward of that was not considered wetlands. So we are now on our third step in the process. The third step in the process is getting approval from you to reclassify that area on the future land use map from wetlands to mixed residential. And to do that, we need to amend the future land use map, which, as Jason shared with you, requires transmittal to the state, and then it'll come, well, actually, this is small scale, so it doesn't require it to come back. But it does require your approval to send it to the state, and then we'll be good to go after that third step. So we respectfully request that you approve transmittal today.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Spector? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak for public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. Is there any discussion or any further questions for the staff or the applicant? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'll move ordinance 23-16, small scale map amendment for 21471 Widgeon Terrace.
Got a motion by Counselor King. Is there a second? I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, do we have to do a roll call? Counselor King,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Adderholt,
Aye.
Mayor Allers, aye. Counselor Woodson,
Aye.
Counselor Veach,
Aye.
motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next is our administrative agenda, proposed 2024 Town Council meeting schedule. Is this you, Madam Clerk? Discuss it or?
Sure, if you want me to. It's just pretty straightforward. There's attached proposed calendar for next year. We can make any changes you desire. If not, we'll adopt that and get it on our calendars.
Does anyone have any issues with the proposed dates that were in the packet?
The only date I have a conflict with, and this is not a it's a personal conflict, not a professional one, is the M&P on February 8th. I have a previous engagement out of state.
Okay. Do you want us to move that around so you can be at that, or are you okay with an excused absence for that one?
Well, I know you'd miss me if I wasn't there.
We always miss you, Bill.
I'll leave it up to council. The 15th is currently open for me, but I don't want to, screw up everyone else's schedule with this.
I'm okay with either date, so if there's no objections to moving it to the 15th.
Could we just, because I'm just now open my calendar.
Sure.
What is it? We're moving it from the
The
15th to the 14th?
From the 8th to the 15th,
So February 8th
to the 15th.
to the 15th.
Yep, the week after.
That's certainly fine from my end.
Counselor King,
I'm okay with that.
Counselor Woodson,
I'm good.
I'm all good. I'm good with that. Can we change that one to the 15th?
Got it.
Thank you very much.
Any other complications there?
Just while we have Amy's attention, I'm guessing for December of this year, we're going with the 4th, the 7th, 4th for a meeting, 7th for the M&P, and we're having a town meeting on the 18th of December. Is that still the way?
That's correct.
Okay. I know at times, I think, Amy, we decided not to have that last December meeting. I'm fine with it. I just wanted to make sure that that's our plan of attack.
That's the will of the council, whether we have it or not.
Okay.
Do we need to make that decision now, or?
I think that's the December. Are you talking about?
The second one in December?
I think that's the same dates that we already had it in. There's no changes.
I think the conversation is whether to hold it or not.
Yeah.
I think it's important to hold it. We've got a lot of business that,
I do too.
Yep. I'm
Yeah,
in town.
I say
I just
we
want
hold
to
it.
make sure everybody was in town. Yep.
and then what was that date again? I'm sorry.
That's the
December
18th.
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 And
Yeah,
then
I've already got it.
There's an LPA meeting on the 19th as
Yep.
well. So, yep.
Yeah, I'm in favor of having that meeting.
Isn't there an LPA meeting both the 12th and the 19th? Didn't they decide to have an extra one?
That's the debate, whether they're holding the 12th meeting or not.
Oh.
Some people can't make it, so they're talking about changing it, canceling it. Right now, it's still on the calendar till we get the final.
But there is a definitive meeting on the 19th, correct, Amy?
Correct.
Okay, for the LPA. Yeah.
Any other changes or discussion for the proposed 2024 town council meeting schedule?
The only one on Monday, May 20th, I know I will have to leave by 10:30 in the morning. I have a flight.
May 20th. Okay,
But I'll be here for the first part.
okay. Are you okay with, maybe we'll be done by 10:30?
It could be a goal. Maybe we could go for a goal on May 20th. That would be awesome.
I think they call that a stretch goal.
It's always a goal. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the 2024 town council meeting as amended?
So moved.
Motion by Counselor King. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor
Tie goes to
Woodson.
Karen. Yep.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously.
Madam Clerk, could you just print off a hard copy of that schedule for next year? Just put it in our inbox. That'd be great.
That'd be great.
Thanks. Thank you. Next is Resolution 23-159, Budget Amendment Number 2 for fiscal year and adjustment, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Lee County, Florida, approving Budget Amendment Number 2 to the Town General Fund and other town funds provided authority and effective date. Joe?
Mayor, while Joe's coming up, I just want to just give Joe some credit for all he's done with getting the audit and getting everything completed in a timely manner based off the situation we found ourselves in when we got here. He's done an excellent job and has really worked hard doing this. So, Joe, just want to publicly tell you and everybody how great you've been doing for the town and excellent choice.
I agree. It's an excellent find for us, and you're very good at what you do. We appreciate everything you're
Yeah.
doing.
Well,
Thanks,
Joe.
you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Onzik, Director of Finance. So I have a really brief presentation because I just thought it would help to capture my own thoughts and have a simplified explanation of what this is about. So according to the state statute, Florida state statutes, the governing body has like 60 days following the end of the fiscal year to amend the budget. This is a little different from Illinois, where we have a lot longer. So this was a compressed time frame in which to review everything for the previous fiscal year and to make any last adjustments to the budget that would be appropriate to make. So that's what we've done. And that I just would like to just pause and comment a moment on. We had just finished pulling together everything we needed for the audit for 2022. And so to roll right into 2023 and review all that, I was actually really impressed with staff. We were able to build on the momentum that we had acquired in all the work we had done in going through 2023 to do the same for 2023 and do all the accruals that were necessary to kind of get an understanding of where we were ending the year in 2023 and what budget adjustments were needed. So I was really thrilled to get to the point where we could actually calculate those and have those. And I'll be excited to be able to present financial statements to you, probably our next meeting together. But this, for now, we're doing the budget adjustment. And the types of things that we're doing the adjustment for are to recognize the FEMA reimbursements, the insurance proceeds, the bridge loan, the water and stormwater revenue reductions, and then the corresponding impacts on the expenses and the reserves. Because since we were operating in a state of emergency, we didn't actually take time to adjust the budget as those things were happening. But now in hindsight, of course, it's much easier to do so. And that's what this is about. I don't want to get into the weeds with all this. I tried to make this adjustment as simple as I could by just strategically picking line items so we could make an adjustment and try to keep it to the minimum. So I'm starting with the town manager's budget in the general fund. It was over budget, not because of our new town manager, but just because of the circumstances that the town experienced, where the former town manager had left. There was termination payout in terms of earned vacation and whatever was incorporated into his contract. There was that $100,000 is just an even amount to put on that line item. I'm not saying that that's exactly what his payout cost, but that's a place to make the adjustment that made sense. There was $123,000 to help cover the contracted services for the interim town managers while they were here. And I think a small amount of that was also for the HR interim manager. And then we had to increase the budget to cover the last of the expenses for the former town attorney. We took the money out of the contingency fund. So we had the money in the budget in contingency to cover those expenses. And then we did other adjustments to the general fund. We had code enforcement. If you remember last year, we moved code enforcement out of the general fund into the building fund, but there were some remnants of expenses that was still left in the general fund, and this is taking care of those expenses. Then this is the emergency fund. So this is where we are bringing in the FEMA reimbursements, the insurance claim proceeds, and that we allocated it out according to what the proceeds were for, the major purposes. So this first slide is showing where the revenue went. So we have it, just the first couple lines are for general government. Then we have town hall maintenance. These are the individual departments within the general fund. So we had insurance money coming in that we reserved for town hall maintenance, for public works, for marine operations, parking, Bayside Park, water services, Bay Oaks Recreation Center, Mound House, Newton Park, emergency berm. So those are the major areas where these reimbursements came in. And
Joe,
we have,
just
yes.
before you go on, so the FEMA reimbursement, the 3.6 million and the 4 million, was that the 7.6 million that we got right away after the storm? Was the
Yes.
emergency?
Yes, it
grant?
is.
Okay.
And that's how it was allocated. And then we have a separate reimbursement for the emergency berm.
Now, is this, so all these funds have been received?
These are the ones that have been received. This is not a reflection of, what's in the works and what's being in the process of being obligated. All of that is yet to come, but this is what we actually received.
Jor, what is what we're doing today, in essence, a technical corrections?
Yes.
Yeah. There's no significant policy changes here. This is just technical corrections. Is that fair?
Well, that's true. And we're not deciding on whether or not to use it in these areas. I mean, this is pretty much recognizing what has been done in the past, already accomplished in the past,
Yeah.
and bringing the budget up to match what was done.
Very good. Thank you.
This is this exact same list of figures, but on the expense side. And so I wouldn't be too concerned about the specific expense line items that this was allocated to. For example, the $3.6 million for contracted services, that the bulk of that was for like the cleanup and all the expenses that were related to that capital outlay. So, and much of this is not yet spent, but we needed to place it in the budget in the logical places where it would belong, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was spent there. And so whatever was not spent is being carried forward into 2024. And now we have an opportunity to allocate it again based on how we think we're going to spend it. And that those decisions have not yet been made. But this is just a way to do it as of 2023. And then we have the bridge loan. Of course, we all know we received the bridge loan. This is just to incorporate it into the budget. And we are earning quite a bit of interest on the proceeds. We budgeted 4%. I think we're actually earning 5% on it. So it's doing very well in that respect. And we simply are adding it to the reserve since we did not need to use it in 2023. But so it's there going forward to use for this year. And then we have the capital fund. There's just a couple minor changes there. They had budgeted for 2023 that we were going to be getting some local support grant revenue in. And I believe it may have had something to do with the intersection. I don't know for sure, but that never materialized because of the hurricane. So we're pulling that out of the budget. But we did receive the $500,000 grant for the Bayside Park. And so that's incorporated here. And then this is the capital improvement loan that we have with First Foundation Bank. And this is showing budget-wise what was actually drawn down. So the loan itself had been approved prior to 2022. And then we had the opportunity to draw down those funds for 2023 and 2022 and allocate it to the specific projects that the loan was approved for. And basically it's three areas. It was Times Square, Bayside Park, Bay Oaks. Because of the hurricane and I don't know what other factors were happening, there was nothing drawn down for 2022. So we incurred expenses in 2022, but we never drawn down from the loan any reimbursement to cover those. So where you see FY22 over on the right side, those are the FY22 expenses that we pulled down from the loan to cover those expenses as had been planned at that time. It's just, it did not take place until 2023. Then there were also some smaller 2023 expenses that occurred in those areas as well. And we were very careful to try not to, or to make sure that we were not drawing down anything from the loan, like that was not already covered by FEMA or insurance proceeds. So this is a way to allocate the loan proceeds that were drawn down. And I believe there's like $6.7 million left of that loan.
Joe, before
Yes.
you move on from
Oh,
this,
sure.
is there, we obviously still have a lot of work that's going on Bay Oaks, Times Square, Bayside Park is now done. Is there a way, are we working to find a way to use these funds to outlay the capital to get the obligated projects from FEMA if they are obligated for this type of work to pay for that? This might be question for them, but
Well, I can answer that in part. What you see here is what has already been expended and drawn down for things that have already occurred. So the $6.7 million that we have remaining, that certainly can be used for what the purpose you just explained, but it would have to be limited to anything to do with Times Square, Bayside Park, or Bay Oaks, because that was the original terms of the loan with the bank. And the next resolution actually addresses it also.
okay.
So we can talk a little
I'm
more.
just, I'm just curious. And, 6 months is great. It's just, are we going to be able to complete, do we have to complete the projects to get reimbursed to draw down on it? Or can we just have contracts in place for a dollar amount to draw down on it?
The expense has to actually have been incurred. So it's not just a signed contract. It's a reimbursement for something we actually paid out for work that was actually completed. So we have a 6-month extension, but the work, whatever it's going to be used for, has to be completed in that 6 months.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Then this is a more, this is stormwater and water. And basically the revenue was down in those areas because of the damage to the homes and the buildings, the units that utilize those services. So stormwater revenue was down 365,000. So, and there was the projects that had been planned for the year because of the hurricane were not done. So we were able to reduce the capital outlay, the capital budget for stormwater by the same amount. Water sales was down by $2.7 million. Capital reserve fees that would have normally been collected were down 145,000. The fire service fees was down 90,000, and there's miscellaneous revenue down 40,000. But on the flip side, we had much less bulk water that we purchased from Lee County. We had much less expense there because we were not distributing it through the system. So that was 800,000 of savings on the expense side. And then the capital projects that had been planned for the water department, we were able to reduce that budget by the remaining $2.2 million just to bring it all in line budget wise. I think that, yep, that takes care of the budget adjustment.
Any questions for Joe? Yes, sir.
Joe, I've got a question for you. It's a little unrelated to the technical corrections issue that we're talking about here, but it's related because you're here and we're talking about the budget. This is a rather inexact science, but I think it's important, and I'm guessing that the town manager and you are thinking about this at this point. We had a couple months ago the Lee County appraiser here, Matt Caldwell, who did a great job and gave us some hope, quite frankly. Obviously, he said 2024 could still be a challenging year for Fort Myers Beach, but and again, I'm paraphrasing, but in rough terms, he said 2025 and on should really begin to see a dramatic turnaround as people rebuild their homes and build them larger. They lose their homestead tax status and then they get assessed at the new higher value of that larger home. His projection in 2026 was very optimistic for Fort Myers Beach, even just based on the residential side. Then you throw in the piece of, entities like Margaritaville coming online. You've got a situation where our parking revenue begins to come back much stronger than it was this past year. Do you have a system where you're beginning to project out potential revenue? Again, an inexact science, but do you have a system in place to help us project what our revenue streams will be 1, 2, 3 years out? And does it give you hope, or does it keep you awake at night?
Well, I mean, I confess what keeps me awake at night is not having had much opportunity to do exactly what you're saying, because my focus was trying to clean up 2022 and get that cleaned up and finished, and then 2023. So we're just there. But now I'm kind of excited to think that now we're looking forward, and Frankie and Andy are light years ahead of me with the future, and I'm trying to catch up to them. So we should hopefully get in sync sooner.
Do you want to comment on that, Mr. Town Manager? I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's a kind of a general question.
Based on historical knowledge that we have and what we see as a reduction in our property tax, there's nowhere to go but up. We are forecasting a pretty decent year ahead of us, but not as good as I think it'll be the next year. I think, FY24, FY25 actually, which we are in FY24. we'll start seeing, some more traction and upward trends. I'm not a finance expert like Joe, but that's just, historically speaking, where we've been and where we're going to go, because things are going to be new and improved and more expensive, and it's just going to be a better outlook.
And obviously, we still have a significant portion of the bridge loan to get us through this year, which is going to be another challenging year. But again, based upon everything I'm hearing, things get much more positive after that. And I think it's just important for the town manager and for our finance director to, as you get real data, not don't give anybody false hope. But there were so many predictions of, really grim predictions for Fort Myers Beach that first year. It sounds like the future is very bright for Fort Myers Beach. And I just think once we get some qualitative data that reinforces that, the more we share with the public, I think it would be encouraging for folks.
Thank you. That would be my goal.
And,
All right.
Thank you.
and since we're talking about the budget, do you see any significant budget impacts to the 30% take on Annie's yoga fees?
No, not at all. In fact, there's a resolution that I approved because of the insignificant impact it would have and the great amount of encouragement it would give to those who would be involved. So
Thank you. Any other questions for Joe? Thanks, Joe. Is there a motion to approve resolution 23-159?
So moved.
Motion by Counselor Woodson. Is there a second?
Second.
Counselor King seconds. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have resolution 23-138, authorizing 6-month extension of capital improvement loan drawdown period. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, authorizing certain amendments to the loan documents relating to a loan from First Florida Integrity Bank, NKA First Foundation Public Finance, previously made on or about November 18th, 2020, for the purpose of financing the redevelopment of certain town-wide capital improvement projects as described therein, approving the form of and authorizing the execution and delivery of said amendments as described herein, providing for the rights and securities of the owner of the note, making certain other covenants and agreements in conjunction therewith, providing for severability and providing for an effective date. Joe, getting your steps in, my friend.
thank you, Joe Onsick, again, Finance Director. This, the title, I think, is much longer than the actual amendment to the loan agreement. This is the simplest amendment I'd have ever seen. It's basically amending the drawdown, extension. Well, I'm not saying this correctly. The expiration of the drawdown period is being moved from November 18th to May 1st of 2024. So basically, it's a 6-month extension. Gives us an additional 6 months to draw down the $6.7 million that remains available to the town to use. It's a very good interest rate of 3.15%. It's just the purpose of doing this extension is not necessarily that we're planning on using it, but we want to make sure we have the ability to use it, and that's one of the options we have available to us.
Well, I would challenge you and town management to be very aggressive with this, to work on FEMA obligated projects. We're never going to get that interest rate, at least for a while. If this is something that we can use, financially, fiscal responsibly anyway, to be able to front load these projects in order to get reimbursed, I really encourage you to get creative and find ways to make it work on the 2 projects that we have left that we can use it on.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Any questions for Joe?
So what do we, obviously, we're not going to have like Bay Oaks built in 6 months. So what kind of things can we use these funds for?
Well, I think it could be used for the pool. I think it could be used for infrastructure at Times Square. There's certain other things that could be done, ball field.
One thing we've got with Bayside Park and Times Square, we're still dealing with the electrical. We foresee, a big bill coming for that to rewire. I think we're at that point. We've tried everything else, and it just looks like that's what's going to come before. So that kind of ties into this. I think there's some things we can do with the Times Square, some project down there that can get off the ground and get completed. working on the rec center now as much as we can to do what we can to spend some of the money. It's an interesting problem to have. And also the ball field, we should be working on that any minute with pickleball courts and things and fencing and, just things we can do in there to get that up to where we need it to be. Renovation of pool buildings, or the pool probably is going to be the one thing we can probably, spend some money on the quickest. So we're going to be bringing that to you in December 4th to talk about that. So we've got some things that we're working behind the scenes. We just had to just tie some legal things together to be able to present it and go forward. So we're gonna do our best to spend $6.7 million. It's $1 million a month.
Well, again, I think it's important to say that this is to be used for funding that gets reimbursed through through insurance or FEMA. It's not just spending money to spend money. It's using a resource that's in place to be able to do these projects that we probably wouldn't have any other way to do. Are we, with Times Square, are we looking aggressively at the infrastructure with it? I mean, now is the perfect time to get in there. I know there was talk, I've been trying to find it and I haven't found it. There was some work, I think, done with the Public Works Department when Chelsea was here, as far as doing some infrastructure work there for drainage. I know there was talk about doing some water runoff spouts for the businesses that were there. Is that something that we're still aggressively trying to accomplish?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Frankie Kropacek, Operations and Compliance Director. Currently, we have that all with the LiDAR that we did for the lighting project. So now we absolutely know what's underneath that area. So we are looking at increased drainage, especially on, it would be not the Gulf side, but the part that goes to Lindhall Park. Some additional drainage into that area going out onto North Estero, tie in that way. So we are currently looking at those projects.
And what about the cleanup of Times Square? I mean, you're still tripping over, foundations and all that kind of stuff that I'm assuming that's the owner's responsibility, but
Yes, ma'am.
what can we do to kind of push that forward? Because it still
The
looks
only
like a
thing that
war
we
zone.
could do is basically just get code out there and just let them know that we're not going to issue any kind of citation, but at least let them know directly with a letter that we have maybe 90 days to take action. We need to see some kind of action on those foundations. I know some of the property owners have put up like a construction fence around their properties. They have to maintain that, especially on the Gulf side. They put a fence up one day, it's down, and then it stays down for 3 months, and it looks like, what? So we just have to be a little bit more diligent on these people.
Frankie, can you just hold it? Can you add that to your, because I want to talk about that too. Do you want to add it to your council?
My time?
At
Sure.
the end so that we can, but we're not holding up Joe for
Sure,
this
that's
specific.
great.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Any other questions for Joe? Thanks, Joe. Is there a motion to approve resolution 23-138?
So moved.
I got a motion by Counselor Veach,
Second,
second by Counselor Woodson. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have athletic contractual programs. Authorize the town manager to waive the 70-30 split fees for athletic contractual programs held at Bay Oaks temporarily until October 31st, 2024.
Thank you, Mayor. In September, prior to Hurricane Ian, I believe the council voted to increase the fees to the split to 30-70, and it was previously it was 25%. So I think that based off what we're seeing with getting Bay Oaks back and getting people back doing things, that staff is recommending no fees, waive the fees for 10 months, the balance of this fiscal year. It's not a very significant amount of money, and I think it's a good public relations move on our part, but that's what staff recommends, and we'll leave it to this board.
Any questions for the town manager?
But I think I would just say it's more than public relations. It actually encourages more public activity. Fair?
Mhm.
Okay.
right.
Is there a motion to approve or authorize the town manager to waive the 70-30 split fees?
So moved.
I got a motion by Counselor Veach,
Second,
seconded by Counselor Woodson. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Keep up the good work. Keep the smiles. Next is Resolution 23-158, ITB-23-18-UT, Tier 1 water and stormwater improvements, a resolution of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Lee County, Florida, providing for the tentative award of a contract to Andrews Site Work LLC for the construction of the Tier 1 side streets, water and stormwater improvement projects, groups A, B, C, and D, bid number ITB-23-18-UT, pursuant to the Florida State Revolving Fund Loan Program, subject to FDEP approval, authorizing execution of the contract documentation by the town manager and providing for an effective date.
Steve Matuska, Utilities Manager for the town, for the record. We're here today seeking approval for the tentative award contract for our Tier 1 project for stormwater improvements. This is a stormwater improvement plan that was being worked on prior to Hurricane Ian. This is to help with flooding on some of the side streets. This project has 6 high priority streets that'll be addressed first, which is Bahia Villa, Ostego, Curlew, Seminole, Pepita, and Albatross. I have Eric Fay here from Tetra Tech, and he's going to give a presentation on the project for us.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve.
Steve, before you start, could you just, at a 10,000-foot level, explain how these projects are funded?
So this project is funded through the State Revolving Fund. This is a project the town has been working on for about 13 years. This is the 4th phase of the project. Eric will go over the entire project from the start of it to this actual phase, along with the funding sources that we're utilizing and the current debt balances for the town through Angie Brewer, who has overseen all the SRF loans for this project from the beginning.
Very good. Thank you.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you for the first time. Again, my name is Eric Fye with Tetra Tech. I'll be the project manager. With us also virtually is Tim Vanderwalker. He's your engineer of record for the Tier 1 project. I believe we also have Mark Brewer from Angie Brewer and Associates available virtually if you have any funding questions as we go through the presentation. Okay. So just some history on the project. You know, this work was coordinated with Lee County when they were working on Estero Boulevard roadway improvements. Multiple phases have been completed to date. Utilizing previously collected survey data from the initial project, the project was divided into tiers and reviewed based on feasibility and benefit. This Tier 1 was higher priority streets along Estero Boulevard. As Steve mentioned, we've got 17 side streets in the project. This is divided into 4 groups. 6 of these also have outfall improvements. And then on 16 side streets, we are not doing potable water and stormwater improvements other than just the outfalls. We refer to those as the minimum improvements. This location map is divided into 2 slides because it's such a large, far-reaching project. This is the central part of the island. You can see the side streets as well as the outfalls noted in black. This is the south end of the project where you can also see the side streets and outfalls in black. And as mentioned earlier, the project was divided into 4 groups following the initial bid in May of 2022. We only got 1 bid response from Mitchell and Stark at that time, and the bid amount was significantly higher than anticipated due to construction cost inflation. So staff and Tetra Tech decided it would be best for the town to divide the project into 4 groups to try to solicit further competition. And these are also prioritized. So Group A being the highest priority and Group D being the lowest priority of the 4 groups.
Since we have a lot of people who watch this, Group A is the prioritized, is priority number 1. Could you just read those 4 streets so people who are watching can hear what's being prioritized?
Absolutely. So Group A consists of Estrelita Drive, Bahia Villa, Williams Drive, and the outfall only streets. Route B. do you want me to
What
read
is,
that?
just for, again, for lay people, what is that outfall only street? What does that mean?
So the pipeline running from the street to the canal or the bay that discharges the primary drainage system to tidal waters.
When you say the street, are you talking about connecting to Estero Boulevard, or is it just the drainage system for the street?
The drainage system for the street.
Just for the street,
The
so it
side
will not
streets.
tie into Estero Boulevard.
Correct.
Okay.
So of those 16, I mean, Third Street and Crescent Street, all of those are always flooded. Is that included in the 16?
Steve?
So OSC, Third Street, Crescent Street, they were not included in this project. The contractor that we have selected for this project, we're asking them to add additional work to it, which includes a project that we're working on around Margaritaville, Crescent Street, and Third Street. There's 5 outfalls that will be addressed there. That's going to be a change order to this project, but it's something that we are already proceeding with.
Okay.
And is that the issue with that area, is the outfalls, not necessarily the drainage system?
So a lot of our outfalls have check valve devices on them. We have extremely high tides right now, a lot higher tides than the town has historically seen in the last 7 years, about 3 foot higher than we have typically seen. And so a lot of these check valve devices, majority of them were destroyed by Hurricane Ian. When the tide changes right now, it comes back onto the street because there's no backflow prevention device in place. So the 5 outfalls that we'll be addressing around Crescent Street, they will prevent tidal change. Now, if stuff comes over the seawalls, if the tides are that high, when we have the high king tides, this won't alleviate anything. But the typical daily tidal changes, this will absolutely help the Crescent Street area.
And I remember the Third Street that Karen was talking about, that the previous director said that there was a problem with slope, where there wasn't enough slope to get from where the water is standing to the system on Old San Carlos, and that the Moss Marine people were not conducive to allowing an outfall to go through their property.
That is correct. That's why we're working more on the Crescent Street side of things. We're interconnecting Crescent Street right now. It just has one box that goes to another box that doesn't interconnect anywhere. Margaritaville also has a large stormwater vault under their building, so they pump that out onto Crescent Street, which causes additional flooding. So we're trying to give a way for Margaritaville to alleviate their flooding when they pump out their building, along with our flooding on Third Street, Old San Carlos, and Crescent Street, by moving the water back to an interconnected system and then having it discharge through an outfall under the bridge there, right by where the mooring building is.
And do you have any problems getting construction underneath the bridge? I thought that was a difficult thing to do.
So we can't get construction over on the Moss Marina side, but under the bridge, there's already 2 discharges there in that town parking lot, and that's what we'll be utilizing. We won't be adding any additional outfalls there. We'll just be interconnecting the other systems that are not currently connected to that to make it all one functional system. We do plan on adding baffle boxes in the way too. That way, if the tides are high or if the load's high, it won't unload until the back bay level goes down, to kind of prevent some of that flooding. At the end of the day, a lot of the flooding that we see on Crescent Street and on the side streets is because of the high tides and the king tides. With a low-lying barrier island, your only thing that you can do is put check valve devices in place or raise the level of the seawalls throughout the entire island, which would be a massive cost.
I have one more question, since you're here talking about stormwater. This is something I brought up to, I think it was the county, or I tried to bring it to the county, is that in Adelia, pretty quickly, we had flooding on both sides of the island. So you couldn't get off the island without going through water. Is there any talk of trying to raise up Estero in the area, the new area, the pickle, and to have that so it's a more robust, resilient exit for us?
Not that I'm aware of. A lot of the issues with the Dahlia, we have 144 outfalls on the island. Pre-Ian, only 27% of them ever had check valve devices installed on them. So we are working on, this project is addressing some of the outfalls. We are working on a separate project adding check valve devices to the majority of the entire stormwater system. 2 things happened with the Dahlia. You don't have those check valves in place and the tides were high. And then the other thing was our system was extremely clean. We have had Earthview out here cleaning since Hurricane Ian, and sometimes that works against you. You have a clean system in place. We're getting ready to make repairs, so we have to clean the system so we can make these repairs. And when you get tides, that water is going to flow through pretty good if there's no restrictions in place. The streets drained pretty quickly, about 2-3 hours after the tides went down. Shows you the system was effective for what we're currently working with.
Steve, just while you're up here, Group A, those 3 streets and outfalls only. In a perfect world, which we don't live in, when would work actually begin on those if everything goes well today?
We're hoping to get work to begin sometime between late December or early January, especially with the holidays and stuff like that. And we do have this priority group that was put out as this project was developed. We are modifying it a little bit with our contractor, and the streets that I addressed when I originally came up here, they are the first 6 streets that will get addressed in this project. And they are the streets that have the biggest amount of flooding on daily rains, not just tropical storms.
Say those streets again so folks who are listening can hear if their street is on that list.
Bahia Villa, Ostego, Curlew, Seminole, Pepita, and Albatross.
And those streets potentially mid-December to mid-January, that work would begin?
They're going to be starting work. These are long phase projects, and we want to let everybody know that, removing the streets completely in a lot of these, removing the water mains, sewer lines, storm drainage. So work is scheduled to begin in the next 60 to 90 days, but, they will be working on their street for a good 2 to 4 months before the project's completed in each area.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
No problem.
And just for the record, would you like me to read the other group streets as well?
Sure.
Okay. So in Group B, we have Albatross, Fairview, Clearview, Sunview, and Palmview. In Group C, Madison Court, Shell Mound Boulevard, Andre Marr, Mandalay, and Gulfview. And then finishing with Group D, Mid-Island Drive, Balin Road, Seminole Way, Sterling Avenue, and the Pepita Street outfall.
And as you phase these other B, C, and D in, are they 3 months out, 6 months out, 9 months out? How does it break down roughly?
So each group was bid for 390 days total. So each group will be performed sequentially. That's the anticipation. So this is a 4-year, 3-month project.
Okay.
So at the invitation to bid indicated that the next group would start at substantial completion of the preceding group. But that may be subject to change based on our negotiations with Andrew's site work.
And I noticed in your report, you were saying that there were some concerns about their surety bonds and the ability to run these concurrently, not sequentially. Is that still talks that you're having with them through the contract negotiations, if this is approved, to see if they can be done, at the same time, or is it even possible to do them all 4 groups at the same time to help alleviate some of that 4-year time frame?
We will be having those discussions with Andrew's site work. The bond concern was raised because the bond limit was $50 million, and in their bid proposal, they listed the total active projects that would be in excess of 50 million. Obviously, they're at various levels of completion. So that concern was merely that we verify with them prior to signing the contract that they're within their bond limit. We believe that to be the case, and we'll confirm that prior to.
Anything they can do to help us out or help our residents out to shorten that time frame? 4 years is a long time. We remember what it was like going through Estero Boulevard, and that 7 years seemed like it was never going to end. But so anything we can do, if they can work with us to try to maybe do 2 at a time or 3 at a time or something, and shorten that time frame that the residents are dealing with the water issue, would be helpful.
We have a couple representatives from the contract here. I don't know if they're willing to come address that. But,
come on up.
Good morning. I'm Ralph Andrew from Andrew Site Work. And just like you guys were ready to get started on this project, I know we had, it's taken a little while, and, we were able to talk with some of our suppliers to hold their prices and our subcontractors. And, it was a challenge, but we were able to do it. So we shouldn't see any problems if it's approved today, getting started in a timely manner. And as far as, doing multiple phases at one time, that's, that's all dependent on, we do want to do that. Short answer is yes, we want to get in here. We want to do, at least 2 at a time, and then we can, move on. And as, some of the work gets done, move on to the next phase, so we plan on not doing one phase. It's counterproductive for us to do one phase, complete it, then go to the next one. So it will make a little bit of a messy situation, but it will move the project along faster than just, systematically doing it part A, part B, part C, and moving on, kind of like an assembly line, if you will. We'll work on the storm on this street, storm on that street, and then continue on. And when that's done, kind of like you would building a car. So it's a lot easier and faster to do that, but you have multiple cars that aren't finished at the same time. So if, as long as the public is willing to endure a little bit of pain at the beginning, the overall end goal is to shorten up the time frame. So that's our goal.
I appreciate your clarification.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further questions before I proceed?
No.
Okay. So this is just a history of our bid process on this. It's been a couple year-long process. The first time, as I mentioned earlier, that we bid the project was in May of 2022. We got one bid from Mitchell and Stark for nearly $21 million, which was 80% higher than our OPC at the time, our opinion of probable construction cost. So on that basis of not receiving competitive bids and the prices being so high, we had recommended rejection of the bid and that the project be rebid. That's when we divided it up into groups. That was the second time bidding was in August of 2022. At that time, we got two bids, the lowest of which was from RP Utility and Excavation Corp. For nearly $25 million. So the price went up 20% when we rebid it. And because of the pricing, we had recommended at that time only awarding Group A in the amount of $6.6 million. But then Hurricane Ian happened and we weren't able to bring that to council. So the project was resurrected this summer. We rebid it in August or July and collected bids beginning of August and got two responsive bidders. Andrew Site Work was the low bid at $23 million, while Pavement Maintenance LLC submitted a substantially higher bid of $44.4 million. So the information provided in the bid was sufficient for us to deem Andrew Site Work a responsive and responsible bidder. They are qualified to perform the work, and we did check with 5 local references, all of which had positive things to say. We didn't get any negative comments on Andrew Site Work's performance in the past. And again, those are all local references. Their largest construction contract to date was identified as $13 million, which is about 45% smaller than the total bid amount for this project. So this will be their largest project, which is part of what raised the concern over the bonding capacity. But we believe that based on their bonding letter that they will be able to stay within their 50 million.
Did that, I mean, you're in this business. Did that strike you as odd? You got only 2 bidders and the spread between the 2 bids, one's 23 million, one's 44 million. Is there a shortage of companies doing this work? Because you'd think every municipality in Florida is doing this kind of work. Are there just no contractors out there? What's the market like?
Yeah, I mean, the spread on the pricing was surprising. Certainly the 44.4 million was also significantly higher than any of the prior bids we'd gotten. So that happens sometimes when a contractor is not hurting for work and they want to make a little extra money on a contract, and they might inflate their numbers a little bit. Not saying that's what happened, but it does happen. I know.
Why so few companies bidding on these contracts?
I think just the scale of the project is quite large, and especially after Hurricane Ian happened, that doesn't explain the first 2 bid results. But with the project spread out, I think a lot of contractors that thought it was too difficult based on the work they already had. maybe spread too thin. I mean, I know there's a glut of work in Southwest Florida, so it
Okay.
might just be difficulty level, but I'm just conjecturing at this
Yeah, I'm
point.
just curious what you thought. Yeah.
Yeah, usually what happens in the contracting world is when you've got too much work, you throw a price out there, and if they take it, great, you'll take the work. If they don't, then you're already plenty busy is kind of what he's getting.
Yeah. So on the timing, again, we just discussed that with Ralph about trying to condense that time, but the contract time is 51 months as bid. Deleted addendum 2 included deletion of the clearing and grubbing items for most of the project. There was some confusion on the measurement and payment spec for that item. It was a general item where it was to be measured based on what was shown on the plans, but there was only one small area shown on the plans in Group A. It was at Bahia Via. So for that reason, we issued addendum 2 to delete that work, but we did not reissue the bid form. And so both bidders submitted pricing for clearing and grubbing anyway. So that's one issue we still need to work out on whether there can be a deduction of that from the contract amount or if other items need to be increased to absorb that. We'll discuss that with Andrew's site work. There's a lot of numbers on this slide. I won't go through each one, but this addresses that clearing and grubbing issue that if you deleted the clearing and grubbing work as intended, the total would be $22.6 million. The total amount of clearing and grubbing work was $415,000, which you can see. $384,000 in general. And then there was also Williams Drive was broken out separately because it's got an additional grant. So it was bid with separate pay items. So that's where you get the total of $415,750. A lot of information on this slide as well. The bid is broken down into categories, including general items totaling $9 million, water distribution items totaling $3.8 million, stormwater totaling 8.4, and then the Williams Drive stormwater specifically 800,000. Sanitary sewer improvements was $500,000 for the total of 22.6. That already discounts the clear and grub items. So general would need to be increased to 9.4 if you included that back in. The rows here in this table are the various funding sources. So we have a state revolving fund drinking water loan totaling $6.6 million, an SRF stormwater loan totaling 11.3, an FDEP grant, which is for stormwater specifically of $500,000, and then an FDEM grant for Williams Drive, as I mentioned earlier, for another $500,000. There's a total funding deficit of approximately $3.7 million, or $4 million if you include the clearing and grubbing. There are some footnotes there. I can barely read from here. I apologize.
Didn't the town also acquire $10 million through our FEMA subcontractor? Is that not up there?
The $10 million stormwater loan, that's only allowed for Hurricane Ian related damages. So this is a pre-designed pre-project due to Hurricane Ian. So FDEP will not allow us to use those funds for this project.
So nothing we're discussing in this particular presentation is FEMA related or reimbursable by FEMA. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are working on the PA loans for the $3.6 million. The other projects that I was talking about, all the outfall repairs, Crescent Street, those types of things that were Hurricane Ian related, there will be another large project with them for a system-wide, check valves on all 144 outfalls. That's what the $10 million will be used for.
That's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No money's going unspent.
All right. Whoops. All right. Covered in the footnotes, I just wanted to mention a few things. Obviously, with the amount of time that's elapsed, I mentioned earlier, these bids were open on August 3rd. The invitation to bid had a 90-day hold period, so we are past that 90 days. And Angie Brewer's informed us that because of that, we'll have to get a new wage determination. So some of this pricing could be subject to change if U.S. Department of Labor decides that hourly rates need to go up. We're hopeful that that won't be the case, in which case we won't have to come back for an amendment to this contract. Also, because of the 90 days elapsing, we did confirm, as Ralph said earlier, that we don't have an issue with Andrew Sightwork holding their pricing, but it is subject to that wage determination being revised.
Okay.
Let me see if I missed anything. Okay. So there are I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to reiterate the amounts here that are available for funding are inclusive of the savings that are on our next two agenda items, which I will also discuss with you. So just bear in mind that those are not what you have on your balance sheet now, but what you will have pending action. The other thing I wanted to mention is these totals do not include professional services. This is just the construction contract. So contract administration and CEI is not included in these numbers. So in summary, the recommendations that staff and Tetra Tech are bringing to you are to approve the resolution of tentative award. And I should mention the reason it's tentative is because FDEP needs to review the contract and the bid process, confirm that we met all of the FDEP requirements. And once their approval is given, we can go ahead and sign the contract. So that was the reason for it being tentative.
And that I
we-
assume is just standard procedure
Correct.
after they come in and it goes on. Okay.
Yes, they want to see a resolution from the municipality before they make a decision. So reason for the tentative award. And then because of the funding sources, we are subject to several congressional acts, including Buy America, Build America, Buy America, the American Iron and Steel, and the Davis-Bacon Act. And then we're also further recommending that each group be issued a separate NTP so that that funding shortfall can be addressed down the road. That doesn't mean we can't issue simultaneous NTPs or one NTP for multiple groups, but that was, again, part of the reason of dividing it up into groups was so that you could take smaller bites as we go. And then lastly, that you would authorize the town manager to execute contract documents.
If this resolution was to pass today and everything was to go perfect in a perfect world, when would be the soonest we'd see a shovel in the ground on Bahia Via?
On Bahia Via,
or in Group A, just say Group A in
Yeah.
general, not necessarily that specific street, but
I'd have to defer to Andrew Sightwork on that. I mean, there is a procurement period for materials. I'm not sure how long they anticipate.
yeah, and it's not a concrete thing, just a rough idea. Just so the residents in that area have an idea. January? Okay. If you want to come up here. That way I'm not just regurgitating what you're saying.
Probably realistically, the beginning of January is when we would be able to, put a shovel in the ground and start, because of material procurement, like you said, but, and holidays throwing the mix into things, you got Thanksgiving coming up, New Year's and Christmas. So that's those weeks are just gone, so that slows the process down, but I would say January.
All right. That's
Thank you.
Good information. Thank you. Anything left with your presentation?
Nope, that's the last slide. I have nothing further. I'll take any questions.
Any questions? Yes, sir? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I just have a question for Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm sorry. Tim Vanderwalker wanted to address the council.
Okay, just hold him up there and have him say his name.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Mark, Mark Brewer.
He's smaller than I thought.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Mark.
I just wanted to let you guys know there's a very, very recent development, literally in the last few days, that there's additional grant money coming through the SRF program, which will potentially result in some principal forgiveness for portions of this project. It's not really clear right now how that's all going to line up. It does have to be, obviously, everyone knows that Fort Myers Beach had damages, and there are, if there are any resiliency aspect to the project or portion of the project, or even some of the things you had planned on the other funding that might come at a higher cost, that we are going to be working with very closely with Tetra Tech to identify anything of this project, and then also share that information about any of the other portions of the improvements that are needed to be done to keep, make the town more resilient in the future. And obviously there's limited funds, but if we can, let's say, identify $10 million for principal forgiveness rather than you having to use a $10 million, 10% loan, we're looking for an opportunity to keep your costs down. I don't have 100% of how much it's going to be, when it's going to be available. The deadline to submit the information is January 1st. So we'll be working to pull that together and work that through with staff to at least get your, there's no commitment of putting in a request for inclusion. And so as this pans out, we'll be able to provide you additional information, but just want to let you know that that was a very recent development that may help save the town a lot of money.
Well, we certainly appreciate the update. We'll take all the help we can get. Is there anything else?
That's all. Thank
you.
Thank you, Council.
I think too that, the Resilient League Community Development Grant, that we have our LMI census track, but I don't see any projects that are in that area. It's basically from here to the bridge. And I think a lot of those have been done maybe previously, but if we were to apply for a grant for those streets, we have a better leg up with the Resilient League because it would satisfy the 70% LMI portion.
Any other questions for staff or?
I just have a quick question for Joe, and maybe we can do this at the end of these three resolutions, but just food for thought. Maybe you want to come up just real quick, Joe. The debt servicing of the state revolving loan that we have with the state, obviously it's a very low interest loan.
Yes.
But before you were here, 2 or 3 years ago, the council led I think an appropriate effort to bifurcate the general funds from the running of our utilities.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we adjusted utility rates so it would appropriately fund the town's utilities without any subsidies from the general fund. Is that still our policy, and are we proceeding with these projects with that policy in mind?
Yes, we are. I think we do need to take another look at the rates just to make sure that the plan for the rates moving forward into the future are still in alignment with the debt service requirements. It seems to be at this point, but we just want to make sure going forward.
Are you recommending another cost of service study?
I am, and I think it's already underway, isn't it?
So we're already working with a company. We were going to do a rate study. We're going to do a continuous rate study for the next 5 years. So we'll have a rate study going every year. We're working with a company that specializes in a lot of different funding sources, including grants, loans, and our regular general fund. So with that set in mind, the idea is we don't want to hit customers with one large rate increase like we got hit with this year. So we're trying to take our projects, spread out our grant reimbursement, our loan repayments, and make a long-term plan going forward. The company that we're working with, it should be given a presentation to council sometime around June or July for the next rate study.
Have you gotten a taste of what's in store, Steve? In other words,
No.
did the rate adjustment a couple years ago, is it more than satisfactory, or do
The
you think
rate, the rate adjustment that was done a few years ago is not sufficient. That's what we know at this time. We haven't got enough information from the new company. Luckily, with the pass-through, we were able to mark our rates up some this year because of Lee County increasing their rates without having to do a rate study. So we thought that was the best to buy us some time, get them all the proper information, and be able to give an effective rate study going forward. Especially right now, we have a few pending grants out there, so we want to know what we receive first, so we can plan that with our future repayments. One thing that I would like to comment about the SRF loans, the $10 million grant that we got from FDEP that has a 25% match. A lot of the grants that I'm getting have 20 or 50% matches. We are able to use the funds that we pay out in this SRF loan as the match, so the town doesn't have to put up any additional funds to get that $10 million. So all the grants that are coming into the stormwater department right now, the matches have all been covered by the SRF loans.
Thank you very much.
Is there any other discussion for this resolution? Is there a motion to approve Resolution 23-158 for Tier 1 water and stormwater improvements?
So moved.
Motion by Counselor King. I will second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, Resolution 23-158 is approved unanimously. Next, we have Resolution 23-157, ITB-20-08-UT, North Estero Phase 2, Part 1 and 2 Water Main and Stormwater Improvement Change Order Number 2, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving Change Order Number 2 to the agreement ITB 20-20-08-UT between the Town of Fort Myers Beach and Mitchell and Stark Construction Company, decreasing the contract amount by $3,746,334.98, extending the date for final completion by 727 days, authorizing the town manager to execute the change order, and providing an effective date. Steve?
It's just your day, Steve.
Yeah, it's my day today. We're trying to close out some previous change orders from Mitchell and Stark. Eric's going to come up and discuss what's going on with those change orders.
All right. Eric?
Hello. Again, for the record, Eric Fye with Tetra Tech. We'll wait for the presentation to pull up.
Technology.
Freeze.
So these are the, this item and the next item are the two I referenced earlier in my presentation for Tier 1 that will help fund the project.
Who's in charge of putting this up? Is that Jacob over there?
He's working on it.
Is he?
Me. Is there an error on the?
You want to just kind of talk through a little bit of it? Do you have it in front of you that you can kind of talk through it as
Yeah.
he's going? We can always go back if we need to.
I'm sorry about that. The North Estero Phase 2, Parts 1 and 2 water main and stormwater improvements was a project to replace old 4-inch and 6-inch water mains with new 6-inch and 8-inch water mains to meet the growing demand and fire flow requirements. It also constructed new drainage improvements to improve level of service. We had a total of over 2 miles of water mains constructed, 215 water services, 17 new fire hydrants, and about 1.5 miles of new storm drains. 74 new inlets and 7 baffle boxes, which are the water quality trash interceptors and sedimentation basins that were constructed to improve water quality. And then we had 79 lineal feet of seawall replaced and 8 new backflow devices installed. It also resulted in replacement of 15,655 square yards of pavement, which is a little over 3¼ acres. I have maps in the presentation to show you where this is, but essentially part 1 was the downtown streets. That included Harbor Court, Bonita Street, 1st Street, 2nd Street, 3rd Street, 5th Street, and Crescent Street. Part 2, which is actually the original contract, was the surrounding side streets, both northwest and southeast of downtown. It included Carlos Circle, Matanzas Street, or the whole Matanzas Street area, Lagoon Street, Primo Drive, Palermo Circle, and Santos Road.
Eric, can we get a copy of these presentations to get to our PIO
Absolutely.
to get out for the public and get on the website?
Absolutely. And if it helps, I have it on flash. Okay. As a project, just a financial summary, the original notice to proceed was for $5.9 million and 235 days in the contract time. Change order 1, which was, and I should say the notice to proceed was for part 2, as I mentioned earlier. That occurred in August 24th of 2020. Part 1 was added by change order 1 on April 9th of 2021, and that added $5.5 million to the contract, as well as 365 calendar days. This is change order 2, which is the reconciliatory change order for closeout of the project, where we're deducting the remaining $3.75 million and adding 727 days to bring final completion numbers to $7.6 million and 1,327 days total.
So
There we go.
So you can see in the title slide there, part 2 is shown in yellow, part 1, the downtown area is shown in orange. And then here's that table I was reading from earlier with the various quantities of work completed. Here's the location map for part 1 and the streets that I mentioned. And then the part 2 location map and those streets listed on the side there. And I just covered this slide as well. This is the history of the financials and contract time, contract amount and contract time. So as mentioned earlier, the project has a net savings of more than $3.7 million, of which $2.9 million can be rolled over to the Tier 1 project from the RSRF loans, including $900,000 from the drinking water loan and nearly $2 million from the stormwater loan.
What are the two, the Lee County and the town? What are those on what's the 405 and 146,000? What are those numbers?
Lee County funded the sewer improvements, the incidental sewer improvements for that project. Just deconflicting work, essentially, that was included in the contract. So the work was performed by Mitchell and Stark, but reimbursed by Lee County, I believe.
What happens to the other nearly $1 million then that is now rolled over from the net savings?
That might be a question for Steve.
Say that one more time, John.
Well, I see up there a net savings of $3.7 million, of which 2.8 will be rolled over. What happens to the remainder?
Some of that portion was was not SRF loans that were taken out. So what is getting reimbursed is the SRF loans. There were other portions there, like Lee County's portion that was reimbursed to them or reimbursed to the contractor. But the $2.9 million, that's just being redispersed to the SRF loans so we can utilize it for the Tier 1 project. So that the other $1 million, that was not town responsibilities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and as you can see, the town funded $204,000 that will return to whatever funds they came from, I presume. Fair enough. So adjustment 1, if you look at the footnotes there, reallocation of expenses and budget from the stormwater SRF loan to Lee County for sanitary sewer expenses to be reimbursed by Lee County. And then adjustment 2, which is on this line, that was reallocation of expenses budgeted from the town to the town within Public Works. So that's it in a nutshell. Our recommendations are to approve reconciliatory change order number 2 with a net decrease of $3,746,334.98 to the contract price for an approved final contract price of $7,632,343.26, as well as a net increase of 727 calendar days to the contract time for an approved final contract time of 1,327 calendar days. Further, to close out the project with reallocation of the $2,887,579.04 in remaining SRF funds to the Tier 1 Side Street Water and Stormwater Improvements Project, ITB 23-18-UT, which includes over $900,000 in SRF drinking water loan funds and nearly $2 million in SRF stormwater loans. And that concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Eric? Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Just probably should have done this at the beginning, Steve. I know we don't have a lot of institutional knowledge here, so I don't want to put you on the spot. This all happened long before you got here, but I assume that you've absorbed a lot of this. So just for anybody who is still struggling to stay with us here, in essence, we had the 7-year Estero Boulevard rejuvenation project, which was wonderful. And during that project, they replaced a lot of the stormwater, water mains, et cetera. And we did a litany of side streets as part of that project. Are these just the remaining streets that were not done as part of that project? In essence, is that what we're doing? We're just progressing with the remaining streets that weren't covered by the Estero Boulevard project? Is that
Yeah.
fair overgeneralization?
That is a fair assessment. As Mayor Allers was saying, the reason that you're not seeing a lot of stuff on the north end of the island, most of that was already addressed. Either a lot of it was on Estero Boulevard, so it was done in conjunction with Lee County Utilities doing their drainage on Estero Boulevard, and we had minimal side streets and we tied into their system on a lot of those types of situations north of Times Square. So that's why you don't really see a lot of drainage plans over there. Plus on the north side of the island, all the big resorts, Pink Shell and the Western and all that stuff, they all have massive drainage plans. A lot of them are tied into the county system, which really helps alleviate some of the flooding on the beach side over there. The streets on the north end of the island are also shorter runs to the streets. So, there were smaller projects to do initially, 1 or 2 storm scepters versus a road like Bahia Villa that will have 5 or 6 at the end of the day.
And those areas that connected with Estero Boulevard, we shared a lot of those costs with Lee County.
Yes.
These costs we're now talking about where the side street, which the town has control over, those are now going to be primarily Fort Myers Beach costs, right?
They are Fort Myers Beach costs, and that's why we're utilizing the SRF loans
Right.
for them.
Sometimes it's good to have an overview like that for folks who just are tuning in. But thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
No problem. Any other questions?
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
I'll move 23-157 North Acero Phase 2, change order 2.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Counselor King, seconded by Counselor Beach. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the resolution carries unanimously. Next, we have Resolution 23-156, RFQ-13-02-PW, Estero Boulevard Water Main Improvements. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving change order number 2 to Amendment 10 of the Design Build Agreement RFQ-13-2-PW between the Town of Fort Myers Beach and Mitchell and Stark Construction Company, decreasing the contract amount by $2,954,436.07, extending the date for final completion by 836 days, authorizing the town manager to execute the change order, and providing an effective date. Eric?
Again, for the record, Eric Fye with Tetra Tech. This is the last phase of the Estero Boulevard water main improvements, phase 4 at the south end of the island. I'll go back, as you can see pictured there in purple on the map. The project replaced 2 aging asbestos cement water mains, including a 16-inch transmission main along the Gulf side of Estero Boulevard and an 8-inch distribution main along the bay side. It was about 1.9 mile segment of Estero Boulevard. And you can see 14,399 feet of water main was replaced. We had 92 water services installed, 22 fire hydrants, 64 new gate valves were installed. Here's a location map showing the project limits in black. Essentially, Estero Boulevard south of Albatross Street. The NTP was issued for phase 4 on November 14th, 2019 in the amount of $10.4 million and a contract time of 540 days. Change order 1 added nearly $500,000 to the contract amount in April 9 of 2021. Then change order 2 is what's before you now, the reconciliatory change order to deduct nearly $3 million from the contract price and add 836 days. Bringing the,
Would you go back to that map slide while you're talking? The slide there, yeah. See that again, exactly what's happening in this particular slide?
this slide is showing the project limits. They could be a little bolder, but it's this black line. It's essentially the entire stretch of, where'd my laser go? There it is. The entire stretch of Estero Boulevard, starting at Albatross Street and going all the way to the Big Carlos Pass.
So just for those who again might be watching, wasn't that all done when the Estero Boulevard project was done?
Yes, there was some final completion work that lagged. Substantial completion was quite some time ago.
So this, what you're asking for today is just a shift in funds. It has nothing to do with the project itself.
It's a closeout of the project.
So these are the remaining sort of finishing details of that project?
Correct.
That are the town's obligation, not Lee County's?
Correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to help people understand who might be watching. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. This reconciliatory change order will bring the total contract amount to $7,942,959.45. Contract time will increase to 1,376 days. Again, the net savings of nearly $3 million, of which $2.75 million can be rolled over to the Tier 1 project from the SRF drinking water loan. Tetra Tech and staff are recommending that the council approve reconciliatory change order number 2 for the amounts and amount of time and dollars previously mentioned, and that we close the project with reallocation of the net savings in the SRF loan funds and reallocate them to the Tier 1 side street project. With that, I'll take any questions.
I just have a kind of high level question is, I noticed in both these cases are reducing the amount of the contract by a change order. So did that change order reduce the scope of the project?
I believe so. I'm not sure. I can't tell if Tim Vanderwalker is with us. I'm not sure. It's just, that's all I see on the phone. Tim, are you there? Okay. Tim's not able to join us. He was the engineer of record, so I'm not clear on exactly what was not constructed. And obviously, staff has changed since then too, so I'm not sure offhand unless Mark has history on the project and knows the answer to your question. It may be that no work was deleted and it was just a matter of quantities, but presumably some amount of scope that was originally a contract was removed, and I don't know what that is, unfortunately.
Okay. Steve, I would assume that
Mark's. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, my understanding is that there were estimated quantities, and the quantities were less. What was needed was a fewer amount of quantity for different elements to accomplish the goal of the improvement to the system. There were a myriad of changes and adjustments, and I know that Tetra Tech had an inspector on site to verify all actual quantities, and my understanding is that they just simply were less than what was originally thought that was needed.
Okay, thank you for the information, Mark. Any other questions for Eric? Well, anytime we can save almost $6 million or roll it over, we'll take it.
Hey, under budget, that's sweet words.
Yes. Yeah, you don't hear that very often, so we'll take it.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Any further discussion?
Just a quick question for Steve. With this particular project finishing up, this phase, and all the other projects we've talked about in combination with the 7-year Estero Boulevard project, will we have new infrastructure throughout Fort Myers Beach for water and stormwater, or do we still have pockets that will still need to be repaired, or are we pretty stable for the next decade or so?
So as far as the water and sewer lines go on the beach, most of them will be less than 10 years old after this project is completed, the majority of them on the island. The stormwater system is concrete pipes. They last a lot longer other than, system damages from things like the hurricane. So the stormwater system is fairly new already, and we'll just be adding additional measures to it. But the water and sewer system are pretty much upgraded other than the repairs that are due to the North Tower from Hurricane Ian.
And given your experience and the town manager's experience and Frankie's experience, to have an infrastructure for a town for water and stormwater under 10 years old, pretty significant, correct?
Absolutely.
Yep.
One thing good about it, I'll know the entire system when it's done.
So we're investing in our future.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Now we just kind of what Jim said. I also think that after the hurricane, having a new system in place that they actually had as-built and knew where everything was really expedited the recovery.
It definitely makes it much easier, doesn't it? Yeah. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 23-156?
So moved.
Got a motion to approve by Counselor Veach,
Second.
second by Counselor Woodson. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have Resolution 23-161, STA number 6, Beach Truck Haul Project, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving supplemental task agreement number 6 of contract RFQ-21-09-EN between the town and Coastal Engineering Consultants, Inc. for additional design construction phase services for the Estero Island Beach Truck Haul Project for a cost not to exceed $135,540 and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor. Chad is out of town, but Frank's got all the information he's going to share with you.
Jared?
Yeah, it's basically for a myriad of projects we've got working here. So we've got everything from the emergency burn project, which
You
is,
pull that mic a little closer.
yes, sir.
It doesn't bite, Frankie.
We have everything from the emergency burn project, which is FEMA. And that's going to be taking up to the north end of the island. And then the renourishment project is also kicking in here. There's overlapping services on two of these next resolutions. One is for the engineering phase and one is for the actual hauling phase of it.
And this one is just for the contract between the consultants.
Yes, sir.
And I believe it says in the report that this is stuff that's all covered under either grant or,
Yes, sir.
okay. Any other questions for staff?
Yeah.
Any further discussion by the council? Is there a motion for resolution 23-161, STA 6 Beach Truck Haul Project? I'll make a motion to approve resolution 23-161.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor King. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next is resolution 23-163, STA number 7, Beach Truck Haul Project. A resolution of the council of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving supplemental task agreement number 7 of contract RFQ-21-09-EN between the town and Coastal Engineering Consultants, Inc. for continuing construction phase services for the Estero Island Beach Truck Haul Project for a cost not to exceed $47,810 and providing for an effective date. Frankie?
Again, sir, these are all covered under either the grants or covered money that we have already have secured. And this is just more for the design phase of this project in a few locations.
For the construction phase.
Yes.
Any questions for Frankie?
I'll move resolution 23-163, STA number 7, Beach Truck Haul Project.
A motion by Counselor King,
I'll second.
seconded by Counselor Beach. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. The last one is resolution 23-162, Beach Renourishment Project Bid Phase Services. A resolution of the town council of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving supplemental task agreement number 8 of contract RFQ-21-09-EN between the town and Coastal Engineering Consultants, Inc. for a bid phase and pre-construction services for the Estero Island Beach Renourishment Project for a cost not to exceed $30,880 and providing for an effective date. Frankie?
So basically what we're looking at here is dredging at least 1 million cubic yards of sand from offshore onto our areas. The first one we're looking at is an estimated 686,000 cubic yards onto the north and central segments from Bowditch basically to the Catholic Church area. And then the south segment, which would be the first priority due to shorebird nesting season restrictions, we're looking at roughly about 316,000 cubic yards of sand to be put into those areas. This is going out for bid phase for the services. We have dates already suggested here, pre-bid meeting on the 6th of December. December 13th is when questions are due for this bid. The bid opening is scheduled for the 21st of December, and recommendation to award will be on the 28th of December, and hopefully bringing to council on the 8th of January.
Frankie, it says the town's responsibility is 15.1%, which equals $4,662.88. Is that also something that is covered under grant funding, or is that something?
Portions of it are. We're still working on some of that, but from what I understand is the town's cost is not expected to be in the order of maybe about $2 million, depending on bids that are submitted, and that's for the overall project.
Okay. Any other questions for Frank?
Are we any closer to getting a start date? I know it seems like it's still being held up by the Army Corps of Engineers.
I believe we do have some passage with the Army Corps. Last I talked to Chad last week, there was some leeway as far as when we could proceed. They look like we're going to be able to proceed rather quickly after the first of this calendar year.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for Frankie? All right. Any further discussion by council? Is there a motion to approve Resolution 23-162?
So moved.
Got a motion by Counselor King. I'll second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have final public comment. Is there anyone that's still here that would like to speak? Seeing none, we will close final public comment. Town manager items.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor. Congratulations to you two. Thank you, council. I think we've got a lot of work to be done and anxious to get started on some of these projects that you've approved. A couple of things. The Jacobs Group, we've executed the contract with them. Their official start date, even though they've already started, will be December 4th. We'll also have the contract on the consent agenda on that day as well. They'll be bringing in 3 permit techs, a building official. There'll be some inspectors and also some plan reviewers. Obviously, the plan reviewers and building inspectors are like part-time people, but that's just the nature of the business. So we'll be bringing them in as well. Town hall trailers, the first trailer is being removed today. They came this morning and started to do that. So you'll see some movement there. I've also reached out to Chief Worth about asking to extend our agreement to December 31st, and he has graciously agreed to do that at no cost. So we have that, and I would like to thank him and the Fire Commission for that, allowing us to stay there. Also, we have new trailers coming in, and we'll be working on the site hopefully this week, but for sure probably the first of the week, and you should see trailers starting to arrive there sometime in the middle of December. So a lot of things moving over in that little corner of the world, but we've also, looking to get Bay Oaks Rec Center ready and working. They're working pretty much 7 days a week. I was down there Saturday and Sunday, and the sheetrock's going up, and we've got guys in there working. So a lot of progress. Staff is going to be working on the grounds around it to make sure that they're conducive to children being back at play, and everything that needs to be done. Getting equipment ordered for the workout on Friday, equipment for the outdoor workout space that was washed away during the hurricane, which is pretty surprising because I helped unload it and it's very heavy. So that tells you what makes me understand a little more what you guys dealt with. And what was washed away, but we should be getting that installed hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So we've got a lot of things happening in that corner of the world. Also going to bring you some information at the December 4th meeting about some getting started on drawings and renderings and things for the pool, so we can get that up and running and invest back into the community in that corner of the world. The street signs, they should be starting with part of the town, hopefully either this week or next week. So we'll start seeing our street signs going up. I did speak with the Historical Society. They reached out to me about taking the handmade signs and putting them in in the room on a wall. Anything in the right of way is government, it's anybody's property, but obviously this is something that I agreed to, and I don't know if there's any direction or any objection to that, but I felt like that was, a good way of preserving a little piece of the history that happened, and I commend them for wanting to do that project. I did turn it over to them and told them that we'll let them know when it starts and they can start collecting them. So they agreed. I apologize, I can't remember her name, but she was really Jessie
Titus.
Jessie, I think was her first name. So I do remember her name. That's a surprise. But she's was very gracious, and I'm excited about this opportunity for that to transpire and to preserve that little piece of history.
Is that it?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I got 2 quick things for you.
Yes,
If you
sir.
can, have we received any update with the funding for the Estero Boulevard or All Island lighting project?
I was in communication last week. I actually have a email. Someone wants to interview you or me about that today, so we can get together on that. On the project, the funding has not been received by the county. The county manager sent me an email stating that as soon as it's here, they will send the money, but I'm asking them to get the MOU so we can get that in place. So there's no delay there. So Becky can review it and everything is just seamless. But we are continually get calls from the FPL's contractor, where's the money? Where's the money? So, we're playing both ends against the middle, and I'm in the middle. So we're trying to get that accomplished now so we can get it moving as soon as possible.
To try to maybe help expedite things. I know we had conversations with FPL about altering that contract a little bit
Yes.
to match the actual
Yes.
appropriation request.
They
If they
have,
could have that in place for us at the same time with the MOU. so
they
that
have told us
it's
they were
very
altering the
streamlined.
contract and getting all that. I believe that was already taken care of and I've already signed that
Okay. As soon as we can get.
with that new amount, that
Yes.
7.6, whatever
Okay.
the number was.
And then the other thing I have is
Could I,
Yeah,
are you-
go ahead.
is yours on lighting, your second one?
no.
Can I just add a follow-up? So money gets transferred, MOU gets signed, just 10,000 foot level. How do you see the implementation of the new lighting system? How do you see it playing out? Where would it start? How long would it take? Again, 10,000 foot
Sure.
ballpark,
Mhm.
best
Sure.
of your knowledge, and side streets as well.
I would fully anticipate that they would start where they have the least resistance, but I don't know that. Would encourage them to start, in the downtown area, as we call it. But I do not know that for a fact where they will start. I do know that the county wanted to put extra lighting at each crosswalk intersection. So that's a different part of it. I'm not sure how, I haven't heard anything from the county about that, but I think that's pretty much what we know is that we will encourage them to start down there. I have not heard where a start point would be. But we,
So Bowditch going south would be sort of the rollout. And then would it hit the side streets as it goes along that rollout as well?
Well, no. So our last conversation with FPL, we gave them direction that when the contract is signed, the priority is to try to get as much, even if it's temporary lighting, down Old San Carlos in the area where we all know it's very dark.
Right.
Hopefully before the end of the year. They've told us that once they start, obviously there's a procurement issue with a backlog of poles and things like that. So they have the lights, they just have an issue with the poles. So their focus will be in the Times Square area. Then they will focus on Estero Boulevard, and then they will move to the side streets, is what they've told us their initial plan is. So we're hoping we can get this funding soon so that we can get the MOU going and we can get this contract signed so that before the end of the year, we can have, they will be temporary lights because the poles are on back order, but they said they can get something up on those poles, providing we have the adequate power there to power them before the end of the year.
That's great. And then, so again, 10,000 foot, very general. Everything you described happens. For the project to be completed, do they envision it as like a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what they told us is from start to finish, their goal is to get it done in a year. They'll certainly try to, that's why they wanted to start with Estero Boulevard first to ensure that they could get that done before the next start of turtle season.
Yep.
Is the goal. But obviously the longer it takes to get the funding, the longer things get pushed back. So they're eager to get going. We're eager to get going. We're just waiting for the population of the bank account.
Very good. That's very helpful. Thank you.
And so since we're on the topic,
Yeah.
I heard three different alternatives from some of the people from FP&L about where these lights are going to go. Now, are these going to go on existing concrete poles on Estero?
No, they will go. So if you see the lights, at Crescent that they put up,
Mhm.
so those are the actual light fixtures that will be going down Estero Boulevard and the side. Well, the side streets will be a little bit different, but that'll give you an idea of what the poles. They will be all new poles. They won't be attached to my understanding is they won't be attached to the current poles because it's the town-owned system. It will be on its own 20, I think they're 20-foot poles.
That's
With
correct.
the extension out so that it covers from sidewalk to sidewalk. They've got the whole photometric study. They've got the layout of exactly where the poles are going to go. If we have that, maybe that would be something good to get out through the PIO and on the town's website. It'd give you a better idea of where each pole is going to go. But it will all be underground utilities, so it won't be anything overhead, including the side streets. Things will be bored in. So
And
it'll be very clean.
will these new poles go Bayside or Gulf side?
It will be on both, I believe. Yes. Both sides.
All right.
And the study was done, you were there, Dr. Trindell was down and looked at everything that they were planning on doing and gave the sign off on it. So all the approvals have been done. Now it's just literally a matter of waiting for funding.
Oh, then they were mounted on a cherry picker.
Yes, well,
Wasn't exactly a permanent thing.
It was very much a real world presentation with shielding. And I think they even were making some mock-up shields about 2:00 in the morning. Yeah. We were out there. So all the hurdles have been covered and the sign-offs have been done. Now it's just getting the funding.
One other thing, I've been working with Lumen the last couple of weeks about picking their boxes along the right of way, and they've been doing work. I don't know if you've seen, they've
Mhm.
started on the smaller ones. and we continue to stay in communication about that. So, you know, a year later, but it is progress, and hopefully we'll see that completed very soon. That's it.
And then the only other thing I've got with some of our seasonal residents coming back now and more people coming back to get in their condos if they can, or get back into their homes. They maybe haven't been paying attention to some of the things that we've been doing through Tidal Basin as far as FEMA obligated projects. If maybe at the next M&P or maybe the first one in January or something, if we could have Tidal Basin here to give an update on what projects have been obligated, what's been completed, what we're still waiting on, and maybe just give an explanation to those that haven't been paying attention on how that process works. To some, it may look like we're spending a lot of money that we don't have, not knowing that it's coming back, and that's the reason for some of these funding sources that we're using to supply the outlay of the capital at the beginning. So I think just a brief presentation from Tidal Basin to those who maybe haven't heard how the process works or understand would be beneficial for us and for them.
I just have one other question for Andy. Community policing. Now that we're heading into season, I know you've been working on some things. Can you give us an update on that?
Yes, I met with Captain Layler last week, actually, and we started discussing the process and the project, and he had some thoughts on it, but we continue to discuss back and forth, and then hopefully he's out of town this week, I believe. Hope that's not, you know, any kind of betrayal of privileged information, but he's not at work this week. So we'll continue that discussion next week, and hopefully we can have some resolution at one of our meetings in December.
Could I, Councilor Woodson, could I add to that? I watched the Public Safety Advisory Committee meeting where that was discussed, which was great. This is just one counselor's opinion, Mr. Town Manager, but as you have these conversations with Captain Lawler, could we conceptually build into the negotiations that, and I know it's not the primary purpose of community policing, but given the challenges we face as an island, could we figure out a way to build into that contract with the community police force that will have for them to participate, particularly at rush hour in the traffic mitigation issues, even if it's just in a supervisory role, preferably if they want to, get their hands dirty and get out there. I just think having some institutional knowledge, because we have a lot of people come over to help out for those. We hire these off-duty folks, and they're wonderful people, but some are new to the island, some just don't have that knowledge, and we just see this. There's this long learning curve where you'll have a very earnest officer, God bless him, who's letting everybody who gets to the stoplight pass. They'll stop the light, have them pass individually as opposed to having them gather in a group. And that when you gather in a group, that allows the traffic to flow a lot better versus stopping traffic every time. I just think having the community police force with their expertise and knowledge of our island, plus their interrelationships with the local residents and businesses, having them be part of that traffic mitigation time period would be really helpful. And I think it would be a big bang for our buck. We already expend a lot of money on hiring extra officers to help with traffic, but to have somebody there in a supervisory role who knows the island, who knows the locals, the locals have a lot of really good insights on this, how to manage that traffic as best you can. So I would just encourage that we build that into that conversation with the sheriff's department. And I'm hoping that they would be open to that.
I would just kind of counter with that though, Jim. I think the intent of this community policing was to be out in the community, walking, getting to know the people on the street and the businesses and helping them be safe.
Yep.
I'm not sure. And, putting too much of an emphasis on traffic, I think dilutes what my idea of what the intention of community policing was about.
I always appreciate the contrarian opinion, Councilor Veach, but I'm just talking about during rush hour here. This would be like 1 or 2 hours at peak rush hour near the end of their shift or during their shift. It would not be their primary purpose. The primary purpose would be, as you stated, to do all those things. But if you put a list of issues on this island, and you would always find traffic at the top of that list. So to have them somehow involved and have them have a degree of responsibility there, to me, should not take away from their other responsibilities. I just think it's a question of prioritizing it's triaging all of our resources on the one piece one problem on this island that could really and does impact quality of life. So much in that traffic safety piece where they're directing traffic, where they're managing the folks that are directing traffic. Such a huge part of how well that flow works. And again, if there's an issue down Estero, they could call in. There's ways to triage. I cannot imagine having 2 additional officers here full time and not have them play any role in traffic congestion mitigation. That seems insane to me, and a tremendous waste of resources.
Well, I think it's important at this point to remember that what we have approved so far is not 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week coverage for community policing. It will be at different times. It'll be different. It won't be 2 cars parked on the island 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I think it's important to manage that expectation. In speaking with Captain Layler, he was very, very much upfront about what is it that the council, what is it the community, what's important, whether it's traffic, whether it's getting out in the community and going up and down the streets. What are the priorities, the top priorities? For instance, I said I've noticed of late, early in the morning and late in the afternoon, when workers are leaving and coming on the island, that they're using more and more that center lane as a passing lane, and many people are getting close to getting hit. And as we start to get more and more people, having them down here would be very beneficial at specific times to maybe thwart their idea. He actually shared a story with me that he was in his car and someone thought it was a good idea to pass him in the center lane. So it just goes to show you that.
And your point is well taken, Mr. Mayor. I guess, and to Councilor Veach, your point is well taken. I just what I'm trying to stress is, I don't think the 2 issues are mutually exclusive.
Right.
I think we can lend them at a particular time in the day, if they're on the island, to triage and assist in that one area that clearly has a tremendous impact on everyone on this island. And again, not to take away from their other opportunities to add to our public safety picture. This is just a piece of the puzzle that as we're negotiating what the responsibilities would be while they're on the island, I would just like to see this added to the list of other things that they're going to be involved in.
Sure. Anything else for the town manager? Town attorney items.
Happy Thanksgiving.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh.
Do we need a motion for that?
Second.
You had sent an email to all of us about a settlement agreement that you wanted to put on an agenda.
I'm going to be talking with the town manager about putting it on an agenda coming up.
Okay. I didn't know if that's something you needed to bring up to us today or not. So.
No.
Never
Thank
mind.
you.
Okay.
Madam Town Attorney, I guess I could bring this up under my items, but it affects everybody here on the island. I think I'm looking now to see if you were copied on this email. We've got another situation where the owner of a short-term rental who utilized the owner builder permit is being prevented from renting their property. There's a lot of technical debate as to the language in that statute and how it impacts somebody who's just repairing from Hurricane Ian versus trying to substantially improve their property. He's suggesting litigation against the town, hoping that it doesn't come to that. I just wondered if A, if you were on that email, if not, I'll forward it to you, but B, if you've given any additional thought to that issue.
I have, and I have researched it, and it is a state statute. I suggest that maybe we talk with our legislators to get something that would give relief on this.
Is this something that we could ask the Attorney General to weigh in on? I know we've done that in the
we
past.
could, yes, I could draft a request to the Attorney General's office to weigh in on it.
I think that would be
be
beneficial to help
Sure.
alleviate the language issue.
Absolutely. I'll do that. I'll do that very quickly.
I had a chance to meet with a group of our leading realtors the other day here in this building. Becky was kind enough, I called her out of the blue to conference her in, and she was kind enough to try to field some of these questions that the realtors are having. And some of the realtors also manage the short-term rentals as well. It sounds like there's by the way, the realtors are going to contact their state legislators as well
Okay.
and pitch this as well. But I like the Attorney General idea just to get some clarification and get a formal opinion from the AG's office. But yes, I just think is this 1 year period now it's coming to fruition for a lot of folks who utilized an owner builder permit. I just think it's going to be an issue we're going to need to keep an eye on. And we're going to we need to make sure legally that we're on good footing and that we're giving good advice to our constituents. And I know that's certainly your intent, Becky. But I guess my point is it's not going away. And I think we're going to continue to hear more and more about it from attorneys as well because there's a lot involved in this issue.
Okay, and I will go ahead and draft a request for Attorney General's opinion.
Because I believe the issue they're having is with the word lease specifically. What does lease constitute? Does that constitute short-term rental, or is it, if they can opine on that, that would be.
Absolutely.
I think that would alleviate a lot of the questions.
And the term substantial improvement is another couple
Yes.
vague terms in there. Yeah.
Just to help eliminate the interpretation that could or couldn't be made from staff or from an applicant would be very bad.
Okay.
Anything else for Becky?
No.
Council member items and report. Councilor King.
A few. Sitting on the Lee County Metropolitan Planning Organization representing the town, the Lee County MPO has a citizen advisory board. We have not had a person on that for quite a while now. I sent some information to our public information officer. If there's anyone out there would like to serve on bringing the public's perspective to major processes of transportation in this county, whether it be state highway, county highway, interstate, I guess I should have said, trains, bike trails, waterways. It would take about they meet once a month in the afternoon in Cape Coral, the first Thursday of the month. If anyone is interested, you can contact me and I'll try and get Jenny to send out some information on that as well. If you want me to remain with this committee or whoever, if we're making changes, the town seat is up for the committee co-chair beginning in January of that. Lee Tran did a briefing last week, a presentation. There was one thing I thought was interesting there. I still don't have a timeline yet on when they're going to be completing the bus shelters that they're responsible for. I think 2 of them have been easy fixes so far. So I've heard that should be taken care of, but that would leave about 6 others, I believe. But here was an interesting fact that they shared, that Fort Myers Beach had the most Hurricane Ian impacts, with ridership decreasing by over 90% for several months after the hurricane. Lee Tran currently has recovered about 30% of the ridership on Fort Myers Beach when compared to the same time in 2021.
Very nice.
And just when you talked about the MPO and bike trails, there's something that I actually have proposed is that there's a lot of right of way that can be used for off-road bike trails. And I know a lot of people are not comfortable bicycling alongside the road. Now in Colorado, it started with a grad student where he basically found right of ways that he could use to put a bike trails on. Now it's a network. And it seems like, I understand that acquiring right of way is very expensive and very prohibitive, but if we can work an agreement out with like the water boards that have a lot of these right of ways around canals, that maybe that's a way to be able to provide that alternative transportation off the road for people and not do it in a terribly expensive way.
And I understand and can appreciate that. Yeah, the last thing we've been discussing is Bonita to Estero. Again, that would be more of a railway right of way.
Right, rail to trail.
Yeah.
Great ideas.
Next up, what I would like to see if we could go somewhere with, there's at least talk about this or bring it up at a future meeting. I'm not sure what. It seems in the past that staff has talked about changes to the code that were, I guess for lack of a better term, I'll call silly or maybe outdated. It seems like if I remember recalling correctly, they were going to be bringing us many at the same time instead of trying to piecemeal them together as in the past. But it seems like, especially with the latest issue regarding parking, that some of these maybe need to be addressed quicker than what they could possibly be. And I just don't know if that's something we want to talk about now or at least set up some other time, because quite honestly, in my opinion, the parking requirements for at least restaurants and bars is asinine.
I believe before the storm, the staff, if I'm not mistaken, was working on finding some deficiencies that were in the land development code to bring forth with Eddie. And I don't know that they've ever really presented what their findings were as far as certain things. You know, I try to go through the code and see if there's things in there that just don't make sense in today's world. For instance, parking lots. Even if someone wanted to build a parking lot, the current code is written that you have to have a 25-foot buffer to be able to even start that. There's no lots on Fort Myers Beach that make that feasible. Do we really need a 25-foot commercial buffer for a parking garage? You know, things like that we could look at that can address some of these issues, as opposed to once you find them, you react to them, try to be proactive and get that list if they have it. They've been working on it for a couple of years, I believe, to see what that is so that we can, as a council, look at it. We hear from our constituents, we see it there every day. We know what the hot buttons are and what the top priorities are. And if there's something we can do through policy changes to get these changed faster before they have to be put into a potential plan development to then come through the process, I think would help alleviate a lot of what people are talking about.
I agree.
Go ahead, Frankie.
If I may say something, sir, Sarah Prost and I are currently working on a bunch of changes that hopefully we'll have shortly after the first of the year. We've been in great communication. She's got some fantastic ideas. Again, my kind, pushing the envelope a little bit, but modernizing where we should be. Nothing radical. And these will all be put in proposition form first and see where they go from there.
I think the sooner we can get that, the better. I think there are some that have an interpretation that things aren't being done, but they are being done, but they're not being brought to light that they're being done. So I think the more communicative we can be with, here's what we're working on, here's what we're thinking, people then have a chance to weigh in on it, and the changes can be made once and we can get moving forward. But the sooner we could get that list, I think would be beneficial for everyone.
Yes, sir.
You know, and just to add to that, I think with all the rebuild that's going on, I mean, there have got to be issues, and I know there are, of things that we see, or they see, I should say, every time. There should be like a top 10 list or a top 15 list that we either just goes to administrative or we just pass them through or whatever that is, but to be inclusive of that. So we only do this one time through and just look at, you know, what are these top priorities that we're seeing over and over and over.
You know, I would think, that I think the parking issue is complicated, just listening to what you guys are saying. I know that there's been complaints for a while, there's not enough parking, that businesses who don't have parking for their business complain that there's no place for their employees to park. And that if we allow development without having some common sense parking requirements, then that makes our parking situation worse. And the idea of allowing, I understand the idea of allowing people to actually put more cars in a parking lot, like Dan's suggesting, without maybe the buffers. But I'm just saying this is probably a topic from being M&P because there's a lot of angles to it.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of having just wall-to-wall pavement, you know, for cars. It kind of takes away from a lot of what the downtown is. And I think there might be some other bigger solutions that we can be talking about that maybe we can really think about where we could potentially put a parking garage to alleviate things in a more constructive fashion.
Just before we get off that, and I agree, this should be this whole conversation, not just parking, should be part of a bigger M&P conversation. Maybe that's where these recommended changes or deficiencies that they see on a day-to-day basis can be brought forth so we can give direction and get it moving. Becky, if there's something that you could look into while we're doing that, I have not been able to find anything, but if there are any state statute or regulations for parking for businesses, whether it's ADA, whether it's, I've been trying to search and it's a lot of work, but if there's anything in your professional realm that you could bring forth that there are state statutes that require this, this, or this, I think would be helpful. We don't want to make changes that are going to be obviously. not-
There really aren't. I can give you an example in the city of Orlando, in the downtown area, you're not allowed to have your own parking. Unless you had it way back when. The new construction, they don't allow it because they have city-owned parking garages and they want the customers. And they have determined that it's better just not to have empty lots with just parking on it. So there are no mandates. Now, the federal government, obviously, if you have parking, you have to have handicapped as long as it's for public use for the parking, but it doesn't require you to have any parking at all.
Okay. Well, then I don't feel so bad not being able to find something.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Okay.
Could I just add one more parking comment / question? We had, I think, a contract already signed with a company prior to Ian for a parking app that could help people locate. And I understand that that's been shut down as a result of Ian and so forth, understandably so. But as you're pondering parking solutions, can we at least add the potential of it doesn't have to be with that particular company, but can we add the parking app concept back onto your list of possible solutions?
Yes, sir. We're already developing that. We have 3 viable solutions that we're looking into presently, hoping to get some demonstrations lined up here after the first of the calendar year.
Really?
Yes.
You got it. You got all these good things going on. You got to share these things, Frankie. This is good stuff. Yeah. All right.
So
Thank
as
you.
soon as we get more information, we'll get
I
that.
appreciate that. Yeah. Thanks.
And yeah, Frankie, I mean, the sweet spot to that in me was that people, when they're coming onto the island, can go right to a parking spot or maybe even reserve a parking spot so they know when they get there, they have a place to go and they're not.
Oh, geez, don't say it. I can already see that. Why is someone sitting in my cabana? Anything
That's
else
it for me.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Councilor Woodson, are you going to raise the development agreement in your council items?
Well, I was going to raise the development agreement along with the joint meeting at the LPA,
Okay.
which is where I think that's supposed to be discussed.
I will yield then to you on that. I have just one small item then aside from that. I understand the folks at EBIA who have a beach access just between Leonardo Arms and Riviera. Frankie, you the other day were kind enough to help us on that beach access issue. I think they either met with you or Chad and they submitted some plans.
Yeah, that's for the Tiki Hut.
Yes. Yep.
Yes. We're not going to have any issues with that, sir.
Have you had a chance to get back with them and review that and just let them know that I don't think they've heard back from the town. I mean, that's good news.
I have not, but I'll make sure that that happens this afternoon.
Could
Yes.
you formally communicate that to them? That would be great. Just by way of information, that beach access has been heavily utilized by the town to help with the emergency berm sand, and it's been great. And the trucks are pouring in there, which is wonderful. But when that's done, obviously they'll be ready to sort of resume that being a traditional beach access.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much. That's all I've got.
Okay, Council Woodson?
So going back to that development deviation, so there were 3 items that were brought up in the LPA meeting by Patrick Vanass and requesting a joint meeting of the council and LPA. But I haven't seen any dates, or do we know where that stands with everything?
I thought by watching the LPA meeting, they got the stuff at the end and they wanted to look at it and then they were going to push to get the LPA was going to push for the joint meeting. Maybe I misunderstood what I heard him say, but
No, I think that's probably true that they were going to push for it, but I didn't know if there was any conversations about
okay.
that as far as a date or when that might have happened or anything. Okay.
No, there's no conversation yet about that.
So how do we get that going?
I was under,
can you
I was under
reach
the,
out to
un-
the chair? I would think of the LPA to see if
I
they
was
can.
under the understanding that was the second meeting in December.
On the 12th, I thought that's what they were talking about, right?
Well, I thought they were talking about the 12th too. That's why I thought there were 2 meetings in December
I think they have
for
some-
LPA, the 12th with us and the 19th.
Yeah, I think they had some people absent or something, the 12th. That's why they moved to the 19th. They're trying to work
Oh.
that date out, but I just remember that from their conversation.
So maybe if it, because the only reason I'm pushing for an actual date is it would be a public meeting and it would have to be noticed that it was a joint meeting. And so I don't want it to get too late down the road so that we don't have time to advertise it as that. So, okay, thank you.
Can I do a follow-up question on that, Counselor? There's been lots of references to you, Becky, that you have draft language out there. Do you have draft language? And if so, can you share that with us?
Yes, it's not finalized yet at all. I mean, but I can send you what I've got.
Yeah,
That
just
would be
something to
great.
chew on. Yep, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I think that would work closely in conjunction with things that Patrick has brought up and what we see from a attorney's perspective, and just keep this kind of moving along wherever it would be.
Actually, Nancy did send me what Patrick had given her, and that was going off on a completely different direction. So I was working on trying to change mine. So
I just have heard lots of talk of that the attorneys have language, but I've not seen anything. And maybe it's not ripe yet, or maybe it's
well,
premature. I don't know.
I was pretty close to sending it out, and then I saw that,
Okay.
and it kind of changed things.
That-
But I
It'd be
will,
interesting
I
to
will
s-
send it out to you quickly.
It would be interesting to see what your legal opinion was before you saw that, to compare it to what you are thinking about changing it to now.
It's not so much a legal opinion. It's just, what I'm doing are procedures.
Okay.
So, I should be able to this afternoon, that's what I will be focusing on,
Very good.
and I'll get it to you.
If I could just briefly share, if we're looking at a joint meeting on the 19th, I will not be available. I'll be leaving town, and I'm okay if you want to go ahead with it without me.
I'll be available. I'll make sure I'm available. When
I'm available.
Nancy will be here. I will not, but she will be just as up on it as I am.
So I'd say reach out to the LPA members and see what I'm assuming that they're going to want to have the majority of their people there as well.
And then the last thing was the Times Square cleanup that we wanted to talk about, and getting these foundations removed or making it look more, I mean, you trip over everything up there if you're not on the main drag.
So as far as the town is concerned, what we can do, like I suggested, we go out with our code people. We contact the property owners first and make recommendations that they have a limited time to get their properties in order, whether it's fencing them off, making them safe for the public. Then after that, we could more or less tie them in with our abandoned properties if we needed to, the order that we already have out. We will do the best as far as the town goes to make that safe and try to do what we can. And if need be, we can just put a lien against the property owner if they don't choose to do anything to clean it up or take care of it.
Well, with all due respect, the fencing doesn't do anything.
No,
People
it
just
really
walk
doesn't.
over it,
You're-
And it looks a mess. It's always knocked down.
But that's the only
looks
recourse
awful.
we currently have.
Well, that's why, I mean, I know we've sent out letters. I know there's been, second rounds going out and that. What is our next step, Becky? I know we're starting to get that increase of, why is my neighbor not taking care of their property? We've taken care of ours. People understand insurance things, but I believe we're not getting some communication back from some of these people that we're reaching out to. So it would be nice to know if you can explain to the public what the steps are, our course of action that we can take as a town to get them to come into compliance with what we need. I mean, this Times Square, there's a lot of public safety issues there that,
Sure.
I know the
And-
fire department has a little more teeth than we do, but I don't want to see it on the news or for the property owner for the town of Fort Myers Beach that somebody climbs over this fence and impales themselves with a piece of rebar or something. And that's pretty morbid, but
Well, and we're going
it's
to have.
something we really have to, especially in that area. So if you
Well,
would, I
we-
know I kind of
yeah.
threw
Okay, well, we definitely need to use the code enforcement process to do that, which would be putting the people on formal notice that they are required to accomplish something within a particular date. If they do not, upon reinspection, if they have not done it by the designated date, then they are notified that they need to come before the special magistrate, and the special magistrate will hear the case, and the special magistrate will give a definite period of time in which they need to conform. If they don't, then there will be a running fine. So, I mean, it has a lot of teeth. They can run up to $250 a day.
Well, if it's okay with my fellow counselors, I would like to direct staff and Nancy to make sure those letters go out sooner than later. Whatever the new draft is that has to be sent out to expedite this process as we're coming into our
can
season,
actually
although
just-
we know it's not going to be like our normal seasons, but we're seeing a lot of influx of people coming down and enjoying the beach, and you'd hate to have one bad incident.
We can actually
derail
just
all
go
of that.
down today, sir, and cite those individuals directly and give them on notice for 30 days to comply or to make arrangements with the town and at
Or
least get
whatever,
the ball
yeah,
rolling
whatever
that
you
way.
and Becky, I
Yep.
mean, whatever the legal process is, as long as there's no objection from my fellow counselors.
I don't
leaning
object at
to-
all.
They've had enough time.
Yeah.
It's time to move.
Well, my biggest concern too is we have New Year's Eve coming up and we have fireworks and we're going to have thousands and thousands of people down for that. So, I mean, we are 30 days out.
Councilor King, you were going to say something. So were you.
I just, I usually am one that doesn't want to start with enforcement, but we've been very, very lenient on a lot of things, and especially in that area, and it's time to act.
I was just going to ask, Mr. Mayor, since you have actually met with the group of business owners, my guess is when they come forth with a suggested plan of attack for Times Square, they're going to need and want favorable consideration from the town. Is that a fair characterization?
Well, I think it's safe to say. Yeah.
So that, it seems like from a PR standpoint, from their perspective, might be good to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I were in their shoes, I would be personally worried about my own personal liability if someone.
There's that piece as well. Yeah.
I think that there would be, I know there's costs involved in having to remove some of the stuff, but some owners down there have taken it upon themselves to do it and some have not. And as highly visited and the traffic that is going to be there now and into the future, it's not something I want to see come across a news headline. So everybody's okay with?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I
Most
think,
definitely.
I think one kind of a special circumstance down there is a Pierside Grill, which is in the EC zone. And my understanding is that really can't be rebuilt. So, I mean, removing that, there's a lot of concrete and stuff. So I'm not sure whose responsibility that is to really completely remove what's there and take it out of the EC zone.
But it's the owner, isn't it? That is that, or how does that work?
It's the owner.
It is the owner. So
Unless it was a motivation for them to work with the land trust, because maybe they could donate to the land trust and then the land trust's responsibility would be to clean it up.
Yeah, I think the point is that there needs to be some responsibility taken to get it taken care of. So however we need to get there. Anything else, Councilor Wilson?
nope, that's it.
Councilor Beach?
Just a couple little things. Dan, you're in the public safety committee, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That I would sure like to put some pressure on Lee County to put the crosswalk signs back up. It's precarious trying to cross Estero Boulevard with the signs. And yeah. And they also, some kind of signs up in the beach access just to warn people about the debris and some of the risks, the post-EN risks, without making it sound like it's, not without discouraging it from going out, just a friendly precaution. I haven't heard anything from the fire department about stats, about calls they get for cuts and things, but a lot of those probably don't get reported. But that's pretty much all I have.
Okay. I just have a couple of quick things along the lines of the crosswalk signs. Before the storm, if staff can reach out to the county staff, they admit there was an agreement for Linnell Road specifically, that crosswalk down there about putting up an illuminated crosswalk, because based on the research done by that was presented to the county from the fire district at the time, they were able to show an increased amount of incidents at that location. And I believe that there was an agreement, I don't want to put words in the county's mouth, but I believe there was an agreement through the county BOCC to put a lit crosswalk at that Linnell Road. So if that could be something that we reach out to the county as well as all the crosswalk signs, I mean, I'm sure we've got public works staff that would be able to work alongside them to get these signs back up like we did for Crescent. So if that's something we can work on.
Yeah. And some of the history, for those of you who haven't been around, that intersection is notoriously,
Linnell.
yeah,
Yeah.
There's got a lot of cross traffic, a lot of pedestrian
Yeah.
traffic. And one time we actually put someone down there with a fluorescent vest and flags to control the intersection, and they got hit by a car.
So the point is that intersection specifically is very well known for during normal times, obviously before the storm. It was as Santini comes back, as the CVS will be opening and things start opening back up down there over the next 6 months, we'll start to see, and people get back in their condos, that we're going to start to see some increased traffic down there again. So just try to be proactive on that. And then the other thing is, we've talked, going back to the land development code and things. I know there's been some discussion or preliminary discussion. A lot of the things that we're hearing, in my opinion, are related in the CPD process is not necessarily the process, but the cost to do the process. You constantly hear it, the cost to do this, the cost to do that, whether it's small or big, doesn't matter. It's a cost. And I know we had initial discussions around the budget time of trying to look at, is there a way that if you have a smaller piece of property, that your CPD process doesn't necessarily take as long as a larger project does? And should those fees correlate with the size of the job? So it's not just across the board, this is what it is. So I think if you, while you're working with Sarah and staff, if you could look at, is there a way that we can adjust these fees to make a PD process not so financially burdensome on those that have a smaller piece of property versus those that have bigger? And what is really goes into, is it the exact same process through a CPD that they go through this? I mean, is there as much review time with staff involved in a smaller parcel versus a larger parcel? Getting answers to that to see if there's a policy decision that we can make to help alleviate some of these things that are holding up the process, or not necessarily the process, but the ability or the want to go through the process.
And this various topic is what brought Sarah and I together. And we have started our whole thing based on that, coming up with a new formulation for not only the size, but the intent of that project. And to greatly reduce those fees and have a set fee through the process so they're not getting dinged time and time again. So that's what started our preliminary discussions to move in the direction that we are. And so you'll be hopefully pleased with what we bring you.
Well, yeah, it's that. And I know we talked about a fence variance and things like that. The variance fees are kind of not necessarily in understand the intent of when they were put in place, but now it seems like things that were there that are going back, should they have to pay something that's new type of thing? So anything, if we could just look at it holistically and come up with an idea of how we can make this more reasonable than just a straight across a fee. This is one fee, whether you own a block or whether you own a quarter of a block.
Yes, sir.
And that's all that I have.
And I was just going to say, I think it's important though. I'm all for streamlining the process, but I don't want to imply that we're green lighting the projects.
No, and that's not what I'm saying. And that's why I started by saying, the more you hear people talk and the more it gets spoken, it seems like it's not necessarily the process. There are some issues with the process, but every single time you hear someone talk about it, it's the cost. It's the cost, it's the cost, it's the cost. Well, that's something that we can, as a council,
And yeah, and I would concur. I am, I'm a little concerned when these two gentlemen came up and it sounded like they're negotiating a sale for what was 2 single-family homes.
Yeah.
And if this is the due diligence and they think this is what the value of the lot is, that's considerably different than 2 single-family homes.
Right.
And I don't know if they're, if they've gotten any kind of encouragement for that or whether it's just on their own.
appreciate the effort. Bring it to those that know more about the code than probably we do.
Well, in fairness, Amy and I were here earlier when he showed up, and he claimed that the staff referred him here for this presentation
Really?
because he had said he'd talked to somebody, isn't that right?
Well, that's
Well, that's-
concerning.
But that's
Yeah.
that's also kind of a thing too, that it seems like if someone, because we get asked all the time as counselors to, to comment on some project or something that people are working on, but it's such an informal and non-committal thing that a lot of these guys have to go all the way down the road to get this through the LPA and through town council before they got any feel whether town council is, if they're close on what town council would approve. So I don't know if there's a way to maybe shortcut that people could, I don't know. It's probably goes against a lot of rules, but if there's a way that people could actually come and maybe formally present something before they go through and.
I think, it's been, from what I've noticed, are some of these that have come forward that have actually scheduled time, sat down with staff, all the staff, flood, plans review, everybody's there at the table. Here's what we're thinking. What are your thoughts? And they will say, this is what the code says, yes, no, yes, no. And they go through exactly, and then they try to come up with, well, what if we did this? And then they're like, well, that could be interpreted that way. And they work through the process so they have a better understanding, because it's the staff's job to do that.
Right.
To let them know, this is what the code says, this is what's allowed, this is what's not allowed. It's not saying bring it forward or don't bring it forward, but this is what is allowed. And here are maybe some things that you could do to make the process easier for you if you go this route instead of this route. And then it's up to the applicant to decide which way they want to go. But having those meetings ahead of time, I think with staff is very, very beneficial for both sides, because one, the staff has got a sneak peek of what they're looking at doing, and the applicant has got an idea of where the staff will be coming from when they look at the review. And then they can make their changes before they submit or decide not to submit.
No, I agree. That's a good part of the process, because a lot of people, they buy a property not having any idea what they can do with it.
And that's, anything else for anyone else? Counselor King?
This turkey gobbles out and move to adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.